Today is June the 25th, 2024. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. I am in Oklahoma City, I guess.
Yes, you are.
Close to Tuttle, aren't we?
And we're actually more Oklahoma is what I mean. It's actually Oklahoma City, but it's more school district.
Okay. To talk with Becky Norman, who has been in the Santa business industry for over 40 years.
It's 46 years.
And this will be part of our series that we're doing on Santa and Mrs. Clauses and holiday traditions that we'll do a little bit later. And from Becky manages ice photo and Santa placement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, amongst other things.
Yes.
So thank you for inviting me into your home.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
Before we get into the Santa part, let's learn a little bit about you.
Well, I was born and raised here in Oklahoma City, and I really never ever thought about getting in the Santa industry. And honestly, when I was a little girl, I did not like Santa Claus. I did not like my pictures taken. I would never speak publicly when I was going in high school. That was just not me. And needless to say, my career changed very drastically when I got into college. I started a part-time job, actually at a seasonal job in a mall, and originally was at Quail Springs Mall. And how we got into it was my husband's fault, because he was in college with me and he was going to school, and happened to be one of his classes he was taking was with a girl that was the marketing director for Quail Springs Mall. And she asked my husband, she says, "Let me dress you up as a Santa Claus. I need a Santa for the mall." And he's like, "I'm 18 years old." He said, "I've never played Santa before in my life." And engineer student, he wasn't real outgoing or any kind of acting kind of person. She goes, "I can make you a Santa." And so next thing I know, she has my husband dressed in a Santa suit, and he's at the local mall and he's entertaining the kids. He arrives on a fire truck, and like any other mall promotion and any other thing usually around, they don't have a lot of employees or can't find people that want to work just seasonal. Mm-hmm. So here he drags me along. "Come on, let's come to work with me. You can start taking pictures. They need help taking pictures of Santa." And I was like, okay. He said, "It's not bad money. It's good for college kids." So we did it. Well, next thing I know, I fell in love with doing it. That just became like a part of our lives. Every season from Christmas to Easter, we was in the malls working. I was taking pictures. Back in those days, we took the old instant pictures, that you had to wait till they developed. And I laugh and say they were like $5 at the time, but we would sell hundreds of them to people coming in the mall visiting the Santa, and then the Easter Bunny. And then one of the rare instances, and that's kind of what I think developed my career as far as why I went into the Santa world, is one day during the holiday season, it was during the daytime, a Santa didn't show up. And back in those days, you hired local guys, they put on the synthetic beards. They wasn't real bearded. And the guy didn't show up. Well, based on the mall contracts at the time, you had to have somebody in the chair. You were fined drastically. So it was just me and the little manager that was there working with me, and she was an older lady, so it's like, okay, I guess I'm getting in Santa suit. So I actually got in the Santa suit. We actually have photos of that I'll share with you. Okay. And it's not something I actually probably condone. I love the role of Santa should be that, in my opinion, of a male. But anyway, needless to say, back in those days, I pulled it off. It wasn't easy to get all my makeup off and really to try to get into the character, but it inspired me right then that there's something magical about doing this. I mean, the children are coming to see somebody to share just a few seconds of their lives with, and we're really making a difference. And so from then on, I decided I really loved doing this. And then I seen how important it was to find the right person for that role. And when they didn't show up, and like I said, I couldn't disappoint all those kids. So from then on, I started hiring Santas. I found Santas. I became manager over. As a matter of fact, there's not a mall here in Oklahoma City that I haven't been over, that I haven't handled their Santa Clauses. I now handle retail for our sporting goods store. I'm not allowed to say their name, but basically
that's okay.
The local national chains of our stores. And I have a lot of contracts across the world that I've placed Santas in. I've placed Santas in the United States White House, which I'll share a picture with that. And that was very honorable for me. And I have a lot of different places I put Santas that I'm proud of. But the most important to me is that they make a special moment in that child's life. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where I started at.
Well, let's put a timeline on this. When you in college was when
it was when I originally started. Our very first job was 1978.
Okay,
that's over 46 years ago. And from then on, our company, in fact, the company I worked for at the time was Twinston, who then, and this is a very long, seated kind of story, but I worked for Santa Claus. Bobby Riggs Jr., famous tennis player son, bought Twinston and moved it to St. Louis, Missouri. I became his regional manager over the Western United States, and Bobby seen my desire and love for Santas, so he put me on placing his Santas across all the mall contracts he had. At one time, he had all the malls in the United States. But then, as any other businesses works, you have people that outbid people. So Cherry Hill, which is a competitor company, outbid, and they took over some of the contracts. So the two main companies at the time back in the 80s were Santa Plus and Cherry Hill. Bobby got cancer around the early 90s and was fearful that his company wouldn't be ran the way he wanted it to. So he turned around and sold it to Eastman Kodak. So then I went to work for Kodak, and then I placed Santas in Walt Disney World. We did Dubai. We had Santas in the Bahamas. We had Santas all over the world. And they were gentlemen that I would actually find and place and, give them, say, these are the great Santas. And we'd place in these different venues. From then, Kodak went through some financial challenges. So they turned around and sold us to Worldwide Photography, which was made up of two individuals. It was Jeff Angelo that owned a company in the Houston area called Sepia, and then another gentleman that was up in Ohio that owned Worldwide Photography. So the two gentlemen combined, and then they ran the company for a while, and then they sold it to some investors. Basically, I was sold 13 times before I ended my career with the national companies back in 2000, I think it was 2018. And then I had already had my own little company on the side doing a lot of Oklahoma City projects. And when that happened, I just embellished our company. I got into the more school districts, and so I handle the Mustang school districts. I handle the Bridge Creek, the Tuttle, some more schools, a lot of different schools across the metro here that I actually take Santa Claus into and visit all the children locally. So it's been a long career, but it's been an amazing career.
Well, first question comes to mind. How do you find Santas?
It isn't easy at times. Back in the old days, I was chasing Santas down at airports as I was flying out to a mall. I was any little white-haired man around. I would stop. My family laughs and say I would go to restaurants, and I'd never sit with us to eat because I was buzzing the restaurants finding a white-haired man that might be a potential candidate. But that is very much what I'm so blessed with, is I'm able to go and find these guys places in different places you'd never dream of. I've had to talk a couple that have been to doing it, but I knew they had the right look. But that's the secret to it. You have to find the right gentleman for the role, and you have to make sure he's the right position. In other words, I found a Santa once in Louisiana that's an amazing Santa. He still works for me today. But I made the mistake, and that's when I learned you have to make sure and pick the right Santa in the right position, because you set him up for failure if you don't. He had that Louisiana accent, and he was a great Santa, but I put him up in this Northwest Pacific, and some of his type expressions and stuff didn't blend quite with their area. So I brought him back, put him in a southern state, and he did magnificent, still working to this day as a Santa Claus. But that's the secret. You've got to know the gentleman. You got to know a little bit about him and see what his likes, his dislikes, and see how his personality is to be able to fit into the right proper mall or whatever venue you're going to put him in. So, but it's interesting. If you don't, you set them up for failure, and they will be asked to leave, or they don't blend with that area. So
their personality has to be.
It has to be there. They have to love children, and they've got to know the importance to be able to spend time with that child. And I'm not saying you have to spend 20 minutes with a kiddo, but you've got to give them that excellent little visit while they're there. I mean, you only get a few seconds, but to them, that child, that's a lifetime of memories that they've created right there. So
we need to do something with the pooch.
I've got my baby over there. No, that's my baby that just walked in.
I like dogs. That's fine.
Oh, no, it's our baby.
So you've had a couple of failures.
Yes, it's not all been perfect, but absolutely. But if it's a failure, I mean, I've got stories that You don't want to record because there's all kinds of things that can happen with Santa, from wardrobe malfunctions to all kinds of things. But, we're all just human. But I really have always strived to get that right guy in the right chair. And like I said, very tough to put Southern guy up north or Northern guy south. It can work, but it just depends on their personality, their talk, their speech, their understanding of those particular values and venues in a particular area. Like, I'll never forget Monroe, Louisiana is a great memory of a gentleman that someone wanted their child to have, a little gun for Christmas. And that particular Santa that was in the chair decided that guns wasn't something a child should have. But there's a way that I teach the Santas to handle issues like that. And he told the little child he couldn't have a gun for Santa, that, you might shoot your eye out or something. And Santa told him that. Well, Mom and Dad had already bought him the gun. So that became a huge issue. And needless to say, Santa was asked to, find a new chair because that wasn't the type of values that they had in that area. So that's something that's unique for Santa. You have to make sure that, he never promises anything or he never denies a child anything. So
sounds like you do some training as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's not a Santa that's representing me that I haven't trained or provided some kind of insight of what their venue is going to be and how they need to respond and how they need to portray the role. Mm-hmm. So that was very, very important to me because I don't want any of my children. I call the children of the world, all the kids in the world, my kids, and so I don't want anybody disappointed, or I don't want any family upset from the way a gentleman, would have portrayed the role or something.
So, do you have a particular spiel you use when you're trying to recruit one?
I do. First of all, I ask them, do they like kids? And they've absolutely told me, no, I don't like kids. You're not my Santa. You have to love children, and you have to have it in your heart. But I can almost tell just a few words with them, and kind of looking in their eyes, if they really have that desire. They really love kids, and they want to be able to spend some time with them.
But then you have to convince them that you might put them 2 or 3 states away.
Well, that's something I talked to him about. Once they decided, they accepted the role, and it's kind of an unusual kind of thing. The way I go through is like, first of all, would you be interested in doing something like this? And they're like, well, I've kind of thought about it. Or I've had kids approach me while I'm in the supermarket and saying, hey, you look like Santa Claus. Or I had some kids that say I'm Santa Claus, and like, well, what kind of Santa do you think you'd like to be? And there's all different types of Santas. There's some Santas that want to do only events only. They like giant spotlight. They want to be on stage, or they want to do parades, or they want to, be, that commercial type Santa. You have other Santas that want to strictly just do events. And then you have the Santas that I call in my boys, which are my mall Santas, my retail Santas, Santas that absolutely want to spend 6-7 hours in a chair and visiting with all different kinds of children, children that just want to come and see him. And that's my special boys, as I call it, because they're the ones that's really making the difference in the world. They're the ones that's interacting with these kids. They're listening to their wishes, and they're absolutely, visiting with the kids and giving them what they want. I mean, not that they're providing the presents and all that, but what I found is a lot of kids just want somebody to talk to. You have parents nowadays, they're so busy working and going different directions, and dad's at work, mom's at work, they get home, they go to soccer, they do all these different things, but they don't spend a few tiny minutes with that kiddo. When they come to visit Santa, that's Santa's ability to give them those few minutes of special time. Hang on a second, I'm going to grab that phone and turn him off. Honey, can you grab that? Put it in the office. No, that's the baby. That's what I was talking about. That's what I do it for, is babies like that.
And your husband does the Santa too?
He does play Santa. That's, like I said, that's where we got into it. But
so has he done it all the 40 years?
He has, but he hasn't gone off into a lot of the malls. I actually hire other people to do that. He will get in a costume anytime I need a backup.
Okay.
He will be in that suit for family members. Matter of fact, that baby he's holding in his arms, she was born December 22nd and didn't get released from the hospital till about December 25th, because of the things that, her mom had experienced. But long story short, she missed Christmas in a sense, but it was her first Christmas too. He donned his suit and he stood right there in front of our Christmas tree, and we have her pictures. I actually have in here because I was either going to send one of my Santas up North Oklahoma City over to the hospital, or her mom said, no, let's just let him, they'll do it. So, but no, he will get in the suit. And the reason he grew his beard is, again, all those years he used the synthetic or the designer beards or whatever cute little word they would have used for him. But to me, they've always been synthetic bearded Santas. He has always used that. But because I was going to so many conventions, I was chasing down little white-haired men, but he stood out like a sore thumb when we go to these conventions, and all the gentlemen would have white beards. Because I got to grow me a beard. I don't want to just keep standing up here like a wildfire in the corner, with no beard on. Like, what are you doing here? So he grew his beard, and he's had his beard probably for the last 10 years now. And he will get in the suit if we need him. But again, I'd rather give those positions to the gentleman I spend a lot of time with, and that really wants to spend time in the chair. He just recently retired too, so he didn't have all the time to spend 6-8 hours in a chair at a time. So,
well, for beards, do they have to be a certain length, or
that
the
is
particulars
the
of the beard?
interpretation of whatever venue they're going to, and that's really kind of always been weird too. I mean, in a mall scenario, I've had them ask, they want, a round Santa, plump little Santa that has rosy cheeks, to your malls in California or East Coast may want someone that's slender and a fit Santa. I've had the Gaylords is another hotel chain I provide Santas to. And those are another people that, they have a very mindset of what their Santa should look like. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing that you got to not set the gentleman up for failure when you're placing them, is to ensure that they're fitting what the venue is, their desire is. Is he round enough? Does he look like Santa? Does he have a long beard? Does he have a short beard? Some people want Miracle on 34 Santa look. And that's what I call sometimes my Coca-Cola Santas. Other venues want the Santas, like my husband's beard goes down to his chest, but he rolls it up. And so a lot of Santas will do that to their beards where, it's not as long when you really look at them in person, but they can't be very long. So they can be any lengths. It can be anything as long as they got the desire in their heart. So it's really kind of unique.
a lot of different moving parts too.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Logistics. How do you keep up with, this person's got this set of characteristics and this mall wants this? I mean, how do you do that?
Huge files. Now a lot of it's computerized, but I have books and books and books of Santa's pictures that I know where they were at. I know which area they live in, and I know kind of what they're looking for. And then what I do locally now is, again, I know where they live at in their proximity. It's easier sometimes if they're close by to whatever their venue is or whatever they're going to be working. But again, I have other Santas that love to travel. And sometimes Santas want to go where their grandchildren might live. So if, say a Santa lives in Tennessee, but they have grandchildren in Texas, I would love to do a venue in Texas, and they go there for the 6-8 weeks. And a lot of times, either the provider is myself, or depending on what the venue is, they provide them a housing to stay. Like here in Oklahoma, I brought a Santa in for years from Colorado, and I happen to own another home, and so I put him in my home for the 6 to 8 weeks he's here on location. He lives here, and he does my venues or whatever I need, and then they go back home. So they love, some Santas love the traveling side of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
But again, I know that when I'm interviewing and taking their resumes or whatever it is, I make notes of where they like, what is their likes, their dislikes, whatever parts of the country. Some Santas like to go, in the wintertime, like to go further south than then if they live up north. But again, I have to make sure their personalities, their manner of speaking, that kind of stuff fits with the venue.
So after you've matched them up a couple of times, you just leave them that way until there's an issue.
I do and
So
I don't. It depends.
every year.
I have some venues that want them changed every year, because that's just their, you'll get in different marketing people or the people that choose the Santa. So some change every year, and then some I've had for years in a particular location. And then unfortunately they'll pass away or something like that, and we'll have to switch them out. But no, some will stay forever, and then some leave every year. You just never know the venue.
So how does the financial part are they getting paid through your company?
They're usually paid by whoever they're working for. Like, for instance, like my company, yes, I pay them. We're paid like in a mall scenario. The malls provide some type of dollar incentive towards the Santa salary. And then photography company, covers the rest of it. It's kind of a shared cost is what it is.
Okay.
In a mall scenario, they usually do like a percentage. They'll pay a certain percentage. That's how they get on their photos. Instead of you renting a space like the regular stores do in the photo world, the Santa photo company that comes in is done on a percentage. The mall gets a percentage of everything that's sold. Then in turn, they provide some kind of incentive dollars towards Santa's salary. So those salaries can range all over the board. I've had very expensive Santas to, very meek and kind Santas. But now that there's a lot more Santas in the world, back in the old days, they could get a lot more money, but it's supply and demand theory. It's still there. Mm-hmm. So they don't make quite like what they did when we first started in the 90s when we were chasing them down in mall and airports or wherever we were trying to find a nice looking gentleman, where now there's a lot to choose from. I mean, there's thousands of real bearded Santas out there. So, and it's kind of surprising. Now in Oklahoma, we have a large amount here. I think there's probably it's part of our organization. There's probably about 100, 150 of real bearded Santas. I know at least about 200 here in the state. They're not all part of our organization. And then again, you have Santas that will come in from out of state that will portray different roles in different malls or venues here.
So about how many do you need to cover the demand?
The demand for, I have just in Oklahoma, of the venues that I handle, I run 12 Santas right now. And they're all real bearded local Santas, with one will be out of state. So 11 of them will be in Oklahoma, straight Oklahoma City boys, as I call it. Some will be up in Edmond. And they live like around the different little, suburbs here in Oklahoma City area. But, and then I'll bring one from out of state.
So, and if your demand increases, you have to go.
I have a lot more other Santas, and then
all from out of state.
And then I help like Hire Santa is one of the companies that I help. Right, still they're a national company, but because of my relationship with all these Santas, and because I want to find some boys' jobs sometimes, and I don't have a place here just in Oklahoma to bring them in, I will give them to a national company. Like Hire Santa is one of the national companies. Another one is Nationwide Santa that's in Las Vegas. That's Gina Bacon that owns that. It's Mitch Allen that owns Hire Santa. You still have your photo companies out there, which is Cherry Hill. And then you have VIP, which is another one that was a division of the Worldwide Group. And so they're the venues that provide for your malls. But again, I get calls all during the holiday season. Beck, do you know a Santa somewhere? I'm out, don't have a Santa. I have a dear friend in California that owns Amusement Corporation. He again provides Santas for malls. He's a lot of West Coast is where he's pretty much centralized, but he'll call, say, hey, you got a Santa somewhere, somebody needs a job. And so I'm still, as they refer to it, the mother of the Santa world. And they call mom to say, Mom, if you got anybody that can help me out, or another thing will happen is Santa gets sick, or he has an emergency in his family, and can you help me? Do you know somebody? That's why I think I kind of got such a relationship with Amusement Corporation. He had a Santa for a long term that was in Houston that literally passed away one night in a hotel. He didn't show up for his venue. Well, I just happened to have another Santa over at another local mall that was kind of my backup guy. So I sent him over to cover just so the children wouldn't be disappointed, and, to keep things going until he could rectify the problem with the Santa that had passed on. Mm-hmm. So, that happens. The deal with these Santas is we're all probably in our 60s plus. I have a couple younger guys. I'm trying to continue to train younger ones to take some of the others' job, but they will age out, or unfortunately they will pass away. And that's just, it's heartbreaking to us, because they really love what they do, and then the children will hurt, gets upset. So we have to find nice little ways to say that Santa had to stay home, and he sent his brother in to take care of it for right now, or one of his elves, as we refer to it.
So aging out is what? Just a...
I like used to say about 80, but I have a couple Santas that I know of that are still working, and they're like 82, 85. So it depends on the gentleman. It depends on his mindset, and it depends on his ability to still do it. So probably my youngest I've dealt with is probably about 35 to 40. So they've been all over the board. They'll prematurely gray, but a lot of gentlemen will also dye or color their hair. So that's another thing of some of your younger ones. But again, it depends on how much time they've got to spend. It's hard to find a 35, 40-year-old gentleman that's got, 6-8 hours a day to share. A lot of times they have full-time jobs, and so they're just going to be part-time Santas or weekend warriors, as I call it.
So it's usually like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday.
The Santa
Regular-
schedule?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay.
They work at least 300 to 400 hours a season. A Santa a full-time Santa, and that's in your mall venues, your like your Bass Pros, your Cabela's, those kinds of things. They will work at least some kind of hours. It won't be one particular Santa. A lot of times they'll share the seat, but back in the 80s and 90s, we would run about 320 hours, and the Santa would cover it the whole day. But again, he would have breaks. It would be like from 10 in the morning until 9 at night with a couple of lunch and a dinner break. But nowadays, they've pretty much cut that down to where, like, a lot of your mall venues are running to 11 to 8. Your sporting goods stores, they'll still do the 10 to 9, but they'll run with two different Santas. They'll do a Santa for 6 hours and then switch for another Santa for 6 hours. But that's another trick you've got to do, is because you don't want to have a short-haired Santa come in by a long-haired Santa, because, like, the children are like, you wasn't here a while ago. What happened? So you have to also keep that mindset in that your Santas need to resemble each other. That's going to be doing a split chair so the kids don't really notice. So now there's a lot of little unique back into this thing that people didn't realize. But
And I'm envisioning back in the 70s and early 80s, you had a Rolodex then. People won't know what that is, but yeah.
No, I do know, and I know in there, you'll laugh at my office, I have notebooks full of Santa's pictures and all their information of who they were, what state they come, because that's how I used to do it in the old days. Now I have it all online. I've had, Excel spreadsheets with their name, their address, their emails, their pictures attached to it, and I can just go right in and pull up, my files of my Santas. But I still kept, just for memory's sake, and because some of the Santas had passed, I still have my notebooks full of Santas in my office of just, who they are, where they was, and so I knew what mall and kind of what they look like too, a better, more photogenic picture of them than just on that computer.
Does eye color matter?
People are going to say, now, I have a couple exceptions, but if you look at 90% of the Santas I have, they're blue-eyed. I don't know what it is, and I don't know. I laugh and say my dad was blue-eyed, my husband's blue-eyed, but it's something about a blue-eyed Santa. Their coloring, their cheeks, they look like Santa. I mean, they really project their image of what I think Santa looks like. Now, don't get me wrong. I have some dark-eyed Santas, and they're absolutely amazing gentlemen, amazing Santas too. But a lot of my top noted, a lot of Santas you see in print is going to be blue-eyed. And that's just such a weird little thing. But I've noticed that throughout the course of my career. It's like, whoa. But I think maybe too, they're coloring their hair as they get older. Maybe the lighter colored, the lighter eyed gentlemen have, their hair tends to be whiter. So
that could be too. Well, season. You mentioned season a couple of times. What is the season?
Season from Santa Claus is usually from November 1st through December 24th. Okay. So it's a 45 to 50 day spread based on a venue. So.
And you start scheduling and organizing that?
In January.
Okay.
You have to be able to do that, because the Santa industry is kind of unique too. Is, again, back in the early days, we may not have did the backgrounds and did the history checks that we really should have. Now, I always did, just to make sure that I had, a Santa that may have been halfway decent, as I refer to it. He was a decent Santa, I promise. Nowadays, and back when you're dealing with the malls, because there'd been a couple of lawsuits throughout the course of my career in the early 90s and 80s, because the malls would just hire their own Santas sometimes too. They don't do that no more. They go with a national company because they don't want to take on a lot of the liability. That's the back end of this. That Santa must be background checked, and at one time we did drug testing also on them. That's kind of been laxed, but background must be done on a Santa, and it must be done within 90 days before he takes that chair. So in other words, you don't want a background that you did in January to put a Santa in October in a chair. You can't do that. So they must be, usually about September is a good time we start doing all the background checks on the Santas. We do them every single year, and we do nationwide background checks that goes back to infinity, back when the man was born. And you have to do that, because the media we love, but they're also not our friends. And so if they find out that Santa had, a DUI or burnt the flag back in 1976, and that could be a controversial issue. So you have to be conscientious of the gentleman and what kind of background he's really got, and make sure that he's the utmost, first of all, perfect Santa. You don't have anything like that that could come back to haunt me as a company or the venue they're working for.
About when did that start occurring?
Back in about 1990, 1991. There was a case of a gentleman that found it entertaining to sit in a Santa suit and touch children inappropriately. And from then on, it became a huge issue. And I understand that. I would not want a nut or something like that touching one of my children, as I call it. Yeah. You want to make sure who's with those children. Yeah. So that's when it became such a huge controversial issue. And you'll see, you can go back through a lot of newspaper clippings and stuff, and you'll find those cases like that. And even, as recently as probably the early 2000s, I would even get gentlemen that would even apply for the position. And immediately I'd run, a background check or check into them a little bit. And, you'd find that they had these kind of charges on them. Or I've even had gentlemen that's wanted in other states that applied. I mean, these people don't think you do background checks, but I have always done. And I guarantee any Santa of mine sitting in a chair is, fit to sit there. He's got a background and he's got good credentials. The other thing is the insurance side of it. You must have insurance, and each gentleman has insurance policy on them for usually about $2 million to ensure that they are covered to the utmost any incident that would happen. And then they also must carry a sexual molestation policy on them, and each of those are insured. So I'm insured out the gazoo, as I refer to it, with my boys, because I buy all their insurance for them. Now, not all companies will do that. Your national companies will require the Santa to purchase their own. But my company, what I do, since I'm such a, micromanager, Mama takes care of them, I buy their own insurance policies, and I know that all of them are covered to the immense of anything that would happen or any accusations that would happen.
And do you have one out for yourself?
Yes.
For the company itself.
I'm loads and loads.
Hand placement's got to be less than part of your training then.
It is extremely, and you'll notice any one of my Santas will have on white gloves, and there's a purpose for that. It's because those white gloves can be seen in any photo, and they also can be seen by all the parents and stuff walking by. You will see Santas that will buy red gloves, green gloves. I don't care what color gloves they put on, but my Santa is going to have a white glove because I want to be able to see those hands, and I teach them about hand placement. And I teach a photographer too. If they're taking a photo, they better see all fingers, because again, that's been some things throughout the course of my career that, Santa was accused of doing something as child stood up, or a lot of times that comes from teenagers and older people. Santa did this or Santa did that, or they'll encourage Santa to try to do something. But Santa's learned that we keep those white gloves in sight, and they've got a problem. Just do like this, Santa. We know that we can see your hands and everything, is there. And again, I've got funny stories on those gloves, but again, I like my white gloves. So just make sure you're seeing them, and from a photographer standpoint, make sure you see all the fingers.
You can share a funny story or two if you want.
Some of them we may not want to ever publish.
Okay, that's fine too.
No, it's what I say about fingers is through the years, a couple of my Santas have missing fingers or pieces like that, and so I learned and told them that you can always stuff your glove.
Yes.
And so that makes the children don't really notice that, and they'll hold your hand, but you still kind of can feel that it's tough there. Well, I had a dear sweet little Santa that he didn't think anything about it, and the photographer should have not shot the picture, and it's really probably something we might not want to publish either, but I'll tell you the funny little story. Anyway, Santa was holding the child, grasping it, and when the child went to move, he crunched or kind of, held the hands, but you could still see his fingers, but unfortunately that finger that was stuck did not crunch, and it stuck out, and it was a finger we probably shouldn't be sticking out.
Okay, I got you.
So it's like little things like that happen. And again, from a photographer standpoint, you need to pay attention to all that. And Santa was not doing anything inappropriately. It's just the little glove didn't crunch in when it was supposed to. So from then on, I told that photographer to make sure she always seen those fingers and they're all headed in the right direction. So little things like that happen. But again, we learned to improvise. And like I said, Santa, I've had Santas that even had a missing leg at one time, but he had a prosthetic leg. Nobody ever knew the difference. But again, he wanted to portray Santa, and he loved doing it. So
do you spot check?
Oh, yes. That's why when I am, when I do it nationally, it was so difficult. And that's why when I basically retired and in my own company, I embellished it. I go in, as I refer to it, touchy-feely my Santas. I make sure their hair looks appropriate. I make sure their belt's on properly. I make sure their boots look clean, everything. And that's one of the reasons I love doing it locally now, what I was doing nationwide, because I couldn't go to spot nationwide. Now, we had cameras set up on sets, and you could zoom in and you could do different things nationwide to look at your Santas and ensure they were proper. The malls would always, say, oh, well, Santa's belt was crooked, or if they wore the synthetic beard, his beard was crooked, or, all kinds of different things that they would complain about. But here locally, yes, I now can go make sure. Matter of fact, one of my boys don't go on set when they start at the very first of the season. I'm there at every one of their performances when they first start out. Now, not every day, but when they first, their opening day, I'm there making sure that everything looks proper, everything's set up, their hair is correct, their suits look well. I provide them their own costumes too. So again, I know what my boys will look like because I want that uniform look. And so you can tell that by my photos and what I do. And it's probably why I always ask back to the Oklahoma City venues, is because they know that what they're going to get is something quality. And I'm very particular about that.
So a lot of your, well, not a lot, but most mall Santas is part of your thing. Has that changed much in the year? I mean, malls have ebbed and flowed since the 70s. So
it's, the malls isn't as popular as they used to be. As we all know, after COVID, everybody learned to shop online, and they're just not, the industry switched. And what I do now, and again, I'm really not supposed to use her name, but I do Bass Pro Cabela's is what I do. And Bass Pro Cabela's is something that the industry kind of changed to. This free venue is what it seems like the consumer will take their children to. And what I mean by that is there's no charge in those kind of sporting goods stores. You just go in, you can see, I got a free visit, which you still can in the mall too. But in the sporting goods store, you get a free image. Your first image is free. And if you want to buy a picture, fine. If you don't, fine. They don't really push that. They use it more as a marketing tool, and they have a lot of people that come in. They also put it in their toy land, which you can play with all their toys and all that kind of stuff. The kids can play out, all the little things to see if they might like that with Santa's little toy land he's got there. And that's something that I see the industry's changed to. There's so many new venues out there. North Pole Adventure was one of them. North Pole City used to have Santa. That was Santa Dan Short, which is an amazing Santa. I started him in his career. There's so many of these boys I started in their careers, but a lot of venues that are free, you can go in and see Santa, is what the industry is going more towards, instead of the retail side that's just pushing the photos. And that changed right after COVID. Prior to COVID, it was still struggling. The mall industry was still struggling, but it's really got a lot worse is what I see. That's when you see their hours are cut back, and they don't really necessarily have the most premier Santas, because a lot of the premier Santas has gone to other venues or where that they have more, public, more children come to visit.
So before we forget, though, let's talk a little bit more about COVID, how you managed COVID with your Santas.
COVID was interesting, and it's like I had to come up with some kind of idea, because I handled, like I said, the downtown and Oklahoma City venues, and I've handled those for years. But the mayor's Christmas tree lining, how do you do this without children, being exposed? So we kind of cut back on the tree lining, but what we did, excuse me, excuse me,
Okay.
Automobile Alley. It's off of Broadway and 10th Street downtown. And so we had done that venue for a long time, where Santa would be sitting in a chair basically on one of the street corners, as I called it. And you had lines and lines of children come to visit him. Well, COVID, they didn't want that exposure. So I'm thinking, what can we do to get Santa down there, but yet we can still have a visit with Santa? So I got the brilliant idea of finding a snow globe, which, bless my son's heart, Mama wants it, he'll find it. So I wanted a snow globe. So he found a company that designed us a snow globe that Santa could sit in while he was a big round globe. It glowed up with air. Santa sit in it in his chair. He could visit with the children, and he would go up and touch the children. They would touch the outside of the snow globe, which was a washable surface, outside exposure. And he could still visit with them in a sense, but yet he was inside the globe. And so it's a cool light type thing. And it went, excuse me, they loved it. The downtown still talks about the snow globe and me coming up with that crazy idea of putting Santa in the snow globe. So it worked.
Did you do pictures too?
The snow globe is
a bit harder, yeah.
The people can take their own pictures
With that,
all of that venue is they take their own photos.
Okay.
And so the other thing I did was for my school districts is I always wanted a winter wonderland and I wanted a mobile photo studio. So we got a 24-foot enclosed trailer, excuse me, and created winter wonderland.
Oh.
And so it's 100% washable surface. Had all the floors covered in the vinyl linoleum that could be washed. And then I put backdrops that are Velcroed in that can actually come out and be washed. And Santa's sitting in his workshop and he can sit and visit with children. And there's a petition when during COVID, we would use like a clear glass type petition, but then we would remove that after we got a little bit more lax. And Santa's basically sitting behind a desk. And the children can come, and he has a magic book that opens up and lights up to see if their name's in it. And basically, there's some little interaction, but it's spaced where the children are properly spaced apart. And again, it can be 100% wipeable and washable. So we did our school districts that way. So yeah, we can do all kinds of fun stuff. You just got to be a little creative and figure out how we're going to make this work.
Yes.
Because we can't leave the children without not a year without Santa.
Wow. So as long as you've been doing it, your longest one, Santa, has been 30-ish years, or?
Probably my longest Santa was probably a good about 20 years.
20 years. So maybe 20 years is the career of a Santa. Average.
Depends,
average,
yeah. Been average. If it depends on how long maybe he wants to. It depends on when he really started. Now, some gentlemen like my husband started at 18. We, count that whole long, but he doesn't do it ever. He's not a full-time Santa like some of the other guys are. He doesn't really sit in a chair 8 hours a day somewhere. Gentlemen that'll sit in the chair 8 hours a day, usually about 10 to 15 years is a good proximity.
Okay. And do you have them practice their ho-ho-hos?
I do, and we do that very delicately, and I have to. For a couple of years, we had to get away from not using ho, ho, ho because that wasn't politically correct. There were some people that found that offensive, just like we don't sit on Santa's lap no more, we sit on Santa's knee. Because if you sit in a lap, that also becomes offensive. Just like the years that we couldn't say Merry Christmas, we had to say Happy Holidays. There is a whole series of things that Santa has to be socially or politically correct based on the venue he's working. So I have to know those things, and Santa does too, so he won't get himself into trouble as far as if he used the wrong words or verbiage or something. That's just like props and things like that. You have to be so conscientious on any kind of little prop or some kind of toy or something that you might use to get the children's attention if you're wanting to get pictures or something. Because again, some of that can become very controversial. So, and it's, I mean, there's so many little details that can cause a lawsuit.
So many, yes. Well, do you provide the back, the chair, the backdrop per se?
And the sporting goods stores, a lot of the stores, the venues like that provide their own setups.
Okay.
Because again, that has to be extremely precise, so things aren't in the wrong spot. It has to be precise to what, if it blends with what that particular store's, motto is or whatever. We're usually not allowed to bring in outside things in case it doesn't follow their insurance policies or a liability. In other words, I can't bring in a rocking horse put next to Santa because if someone gets on it, then is it their venue, insurance, or is it my insurance? So you have to be conscientious of that. On my own stuff, yes, the snow globe was mine. The chair that my Santa sits in when I'm doing the outside venues is mine. So yes, I do provide pops, backdrops, and all that stuff. But based on the venue, it depends on what's provided and what's not provided.
So you have a trailer when you set up your own events.
When I set up my own event, depending on what it is, I can bring a backdrop. I have a small little trailer that we do travel with, and then I have my great big trailer. Like when I did Devon Tower provides their own chair and their own stuff like that. For years, I had Santa in Devon Tower, but then after COVID, we stopped that, and then Devin just does a private party for their families at the Parker House and different places for their members to come. Now, last year we did go back into the tower, but it was strictly just for the Devin family. For a few years prior to that, they opened it up where everybody in Oklahoma City could come, and we had thousands and thousands of children that would come and visit my Santa. But they did their own decor, absolutely gorgeous inside there, what they decored that. But the Mary Gardens, we did Mary Gardens before. Yes, I take my Santa chair, and my Santa sits in a particular part of the gardens, and children come to visit, and it's open for the public. So it depends on the venue and stuff. So,
do you recall the event or the Santa that you knew? Oh, this is I've made it. You know, I
finally made the. It was probably the bring him from Colorado. He was the one that I spent a lot of years working with, and I mean, he finally made it. He was very popular in Oklahoma City, and they call him the Santa of Oklahoma City. Now we've got his own little website at Santa in OKC, and so, but unfortunately last year he became ill, and he did not get to come. And I had a lot of small children that their hearts were broken, and families too. But we're praying he's better this year and he can come back. So, but that's again, you run into those issues because of our ages, and there's things that happened, and unfortunately he was involved in a traffic accident and caused some head injuries. So we got to make sure Santa knows where he's at. And
yep, you do. So let's talk outfits.
There's all different kinds of outfits, and that again, that's going to be this in my world,
primarily red.
My world is primarily red and white.
Okay. That's
my image, and most every venue I deal with, they want red and white costuming. They don't care really particular. Like a lot of the venues are gone to what I call the Coca-Cola suit, which is a big white collar and the gold buttons down the front with the belt. Back in some of my other centers, they'll use the red, white striped suit and the big collar on them, but they're still all red and white. A lot of the Santas that do photography work, and what I mean by that is they are hired by photographers in private studios where families just come in and do photo shoots with. They get into a lot of the elaborate costuming, and while that photo shoots well, it's not practical when you're putting them out in the general public. The other problem you run into is they like those parade coats, the long coats. They go over the vest and things like that. That becomes very warm if you're in the venue somewhere and seeing loads and loads of children. And it also, a lot of the parents don't like that look. They want the traditional look because those photos sit on their, fireplace mantle of their children looking traditional. Mm-hmm. So I do have Santas that, and they're not necessarily Santas I work with every day, but there are Santas that you will find here in Oklahoma and around that do those huge elaborate costumes and all the multicolors. And again, when I have to hire them for a venue, I said, you're going to wear my suit or will be the red and white suit you have, because they don't want the green and the purples and the blues and all these other suits. And while they're beautiful and they do great in those photo studios, they're not what the general public wants, and they're not a traditional looking Santa. So I know Santa Kenny, he had all of those elaborate costumes he had, absolutely gorgeous costumes. He designed every one of them himself. There was a local tailor that actually made all his suits. He would call me every time he would make a new one, and I said, Santa Kenny, they're absolutely gorgeous, but they're going to just want your red one. So it just depends. And we talk a tiny bit about him. He was our first black Santa here in Oklahoma City.
Let's talk a little bit about him.
He was actually Dr. Kenny Blair. He had a doctorate degree. He was a former NFL football player, and he didn't have to play Santa at all. But he came back to Oklahoma to give back to the underprivileged youth, and that's what he wanted to do, and that's why he became a Santa. He had the beautiful look, and I worked with him. I said, Santa, you're going to be an amazing man. Amazing Santa, you're already an amazing man. But he also loved to make costumes, and the NFL did help, what I understand, provide some of the costs or help pay for some of the cost of those beautiful costumes. But he absolutely, I said his calling should have been a designer, because he designed some beautiful Santa costumes. But again, they were very elaborate ones, but they worked well with the venues we put him in, with the exception of Disney. And I'll never forget the phone call I got from him. He called me and he said, Miss Becky, he said, they have made me this outrageous, ridiculous costume. He said, he was a bigger, taller gentleman, obviously from playing football. He said, it barely goes to my knees, the length of the thing. And he said, it's ugly. There's hardly any fur on it. And he said, I said, well, Santa Kenny, this is where our humbleness comes in. I said, and remember, every venue dictates to what they want of their special look. He goes, okay, I'll wear it, but it's not one of my costumes. And he did his Disney stuff. But again, venues dictate to us what we wear. And again, it's back to, he had the most elaborate costumes in the world, but that's not what he got to wear at his premiere in Disney World.
So he was one of the first Santas of color.
He was one of the very first Black Santas that I was able to use. I mean, throughout the course of my career, Black Santas are sometimes in certain markets like Pine Bluff, Arkansas. If your population, and that's another thing you need to know from a person in my perspective, is what either your per capita is of your income, so you know what photos they can afford. The other deal is you need to know the amount of population. Is it mostly Black people? Is it an Oriental market? What type of markets are you dealing with? And so you kind of need to know that, so you'll make sure you get the right Santa in that position. Oklahoma City was never something that we really ever thought of doing a Black Santa. Well, when I was dealing with downtown OKC, they approached me and said, hey, do you have any, different nationalities of Santas? I said, well, I met this gentleman and I said, he really wants to be a Santa. And it's like, okay. I said, well, I said, I'll send you some pictures. So I sent them Santa Kenny's pictures. And they're like, okay, let's try. So we're going to talk to the mayor about doing this too. Well, it just so happened that I understand the mayor's wife loved the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, Santa Kenny played for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he has these beautiful Super Bowl rings from them. He played in the 80s with them. And so, needless to say, him and the mayor hit it off. They loved each other, and from then on, he became the Santa. We used two Santas. We have one Santa over in a tent that's visiting with children and taking photos. And then Santa Kenny and I would wander the crowd, wander around. And then when it came time to light the mayor's Christmas tree, he would go up on the stage with his mayor and they would light the tree. And so it's been an amazing event. The people downtown loved him. The children loved him. And everybody, he had a personality that no matter what was ever said or what kind of, challenges that he came across, he found a way to deal with them. And so he was just an amazing Santa. He really was. And we really lost something there when he passed.
Do you remember about when he came on board?
He came on board with me in about 2017.
So
and
fairly recent.
So it was recent, but his career blossomed like crazy. And of course, the help of his daughter, Ryan, she being in the media and being in, the social world, she had a lot of contacts too. And so it was kind of odd. It's like, you live out your career, and he had all these dreams. One dream was to get into Disney World, and then he did that. He accomplished that, and then she ended up last year with her connections. He was a Santa on The View, and so he got to do the Christmas presents on Channel 5 here in Oklahoma City, but nationally the ABC television affiliate. So he was on that show 3 times. I think he appeared on The View, and then his goal this coming year would have been, we wanted to try for the White House. He wanted to be able to be a Santa there too, but unfortunately, his untimely death it didn't happen. But that was our ultimate next goal. Our next project was to put him there. So
how was he received in the Santa world at large?
That's what I worried about at first, because again, when I tried Santas of color and different nationalities, they wasn't always received. But because of his personality, he could overcome some of those. I mean, I was even with him last year when we were wandering the crowd, and we did have a couple of folks come up and said, Santa's not your color. And he goes, that's okay. I'm here for the children. He said, it's all about the kids. And the people moved on, and I said, Santa Kenny, that's what makes you so special, because you're able to, no matter what anybody would say to you, you know what you're here for, and the children, it was 5 seconds later, you had a child grab him by, his leg and just hug on to him. So he was just an amazing man. He really was. And I don't think we'll ever find another Santa like that. There are a couple of other Santas, and I know there's a coalition of Black Santas that are in Atlanta now, because I recently met them at one of our conventions. And I talked with them because they knew Santa Kenny. And like I said, we had some times to Santa Titus in Atlanta. is he does some very good work down there too. And he said that he would carry on Santa Kenny's tradition. So they're getting to be more Santas of color, which is great. But I don't believe this year we're going to actually replace Santa Kenny. I think for his memory and all that, I think we're going to do something special on the tree. But I think we'll just continue with just the one Santa. I think is what the city has decided, just to honor him. And because there's so many questions when you lose a Santa like that. You know, what happened to him? Where's our Santa? Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to, to handle those questions anyway. But I don't think bringing another Santa in right now is probably an ideal solution because he won't look like Santa Kenny. And then the children will question, where's my Santa Kenny? Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing about when you have to replace a Santa, trying to find someone that looks similar to them so the children don't have all the questions.
They still believe.
they still believe. They believe. We all got to believe. We still believe in Santa. Of course there's a Santa.
Okay, so then do you do any Mrs. Clauses? When did she arrive on the
Mrs.
scene?
Claus's scene? She's always been around. That you might get a calling for Mrs. Claus maybe once a year. Mrs. Claus is not as popular as Santa. What we did with Mrs. Claus originally, she was another marketing ploy, as I refer to it. When Santa couldn't show up or we wanted to do something in like a mall venue, we brought Mrs. Claus in to read storybooks or have cookie time with Mrs. Claus. Something to help entertain the kids, but the entire draw has always been Santa, and it always will. No matter how many beautiful, there are some gorgeous Mrs. Clauses out there, beautiful elaborate costumes, but they're usually just as I call it, a centerpiece for Santa. Santa's the centerpiece, and they're just kind of the sidekick, I mean, unfortunately, that's just how it is. Now, there may be, hopefully, things will change, and eventually maybe there'll be, just a time with Mrs. Claus. You see a lot of your photographers just doing those private shoots. They'll do like cookie time or cooking with Mrs. Claus or something, but you're not going to see them normally out in the big venues because there's just not a call for it. And you said to Santa and Mrs. Claus in a venue somewhere, and you'll say, "Who would you like your picture with?" They're going to say Santa. Scoot her out of the way. It's like, but now I do run a couple of Mrs. Clauses in like the Santa Run downtown for St. Anthony's. It's a venue that we do on December, the first Saturday in December every year. And I have a Mrs. Claus that goes with Santa there. And she, again, becomes a great photo prop. Santa's the big main attraction. And, they take pictures and children run around. But Mrs. Claus did a great job last year out there with him and, interacting with the public and stuff and getting the kids kind of lined up to visit Santa, that kind of thing. So they come on real strong probably the last 2 or 3 years. But, again, they're not as popular as Santa yet. And I don't know if they ever will, to be honest. I mean, maybe in my career we'll see it, but I've never ever had it. I mean, I tried to push it. I've tried to do, malls to take them. I've tried to get, let's try Mrs. Claus and do something fun. But they said, well, where's Santa going to be? Okay. So, I mean, it's, they go together, but it's not just something that's always in demand. I've not just had the large demand for them. So.
But you do manage some.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of them I have, and I actually played Mrs. Claus myself. I have my own costume, and I've been Mrs. Claus a couple of times. Basically, like nursing homes and venues like that. I don't do the big elaborate stuff now. With Hire Santa, and when we were on Shark Tank, there's a Mrs. Claus in Dallas that is absolutely gorgeous, and she was on there. But again, we still don't get that large a demand for her. So. It's interesting how this world works with Mrs. Claus. You want Santa? I'm like, okay.
Shark Tank.
Yeah, Shark Tank was Hire Santa, which is owned by Mitch Allen down in the Dallas area. I've helped him, and I help him recruit Santas, and I work in the conventions with him. But he was on Shark Tank. He started his business as actually placing Santas around different venues. He does Bloomingdale's up in New York. He does the Bass Pro Cabela's too. And he places Santas all across the United States and the world. Actually, he does some stuff in Dubai now too, where he's actually hiring Santas and placing them in those venues. So, but no, that was quite an experience. And then we just did a follow-up down in Galveston this last year with how well the business has progressed and how large it's grown. So
we need to take a break so you can go see if you can help.
With baby, oh, he's fine. I call him Papa Whiskers. Him and Papa Whiskers play. Her and Papa Whiskers are in there playing. She's probably talking to him.
No, that's just a lot of work. Do you have what do you like the best about it and the least about it?
Actually, it's just in my heart. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. If I didn't, I'd be crazy. I mean, because there have been days that I've literally worked around the clock. Because when I handled the mall venues, the most I placed was 1,800 Santas in 1 year, and they would all call, and say, they all had their own little problems. Every night they'd call or say they didn't like their staff, or their hotel room wasn't right, or whatever their little problem might have been at the time. But I would work around the clock because I had all the time zones, and then I handled Hawaii too. So they're like 4 hours behind us. So you've got all these time zones and all these people calling with all little tiny problems. So I was working like 24/7 literally during the holiday times. I'll never forget, my aunt passed away and I went to her service. My phone goes off in the service. I forgot to turn it off, but it was a Santa calling, So, I mean, it's just part of my life. It's always been part of my life, my whole family. I mean, I regret, I guess, at the time I didn't get to spend as much time at Christmas with my family, even though I was here. My body and my physical self was here. In my mind wasn't, because I had all these other venues and all this stuff. That's the thing I see about holiday performers. We really do give up our Christmas to give other people, a memory. And then we really do, because we're working so much, and it goes all the way through Christmas. And then sometimes we have incentives even send presents or bring presents on Christmas Day. So it depends on, you have to really, it's a commitment. Do you really want to commit yourself? Do you want to give up your life during this holiday time when other people are going out and picking out the Christmas tree, or, having family over? We're really all working. We're the ones that are providing them those memories. So that's something that, again, you have to really want to do.
Yeah, and during that time, what do you do for self-care? Or does it exist during that time?
We don't have time for self-care.
Chocolate, huh?
Whatever you want to do. So it's like, exactly. I used to have one of my managers loved me, and bless her heart, she would always send me chocolate fudge every year. She made homemade fudge, and we knew we'd get through the season as long as her fudge came through. But no, it's a lot of time. And any of them, like from Mitch down in Dallas that owns Our Santa, to Gina, and she works around the clock. We all do during the holiday season, because if you get a Santa that would go down or be sick on you or something like that, or you have to replace him, or you have a venue that's not happy with their Santa, or they don't happy with the look, or there's just all kinds of little things that can come up that you got to take care of during the holiday season. And the larger your company is, the more challenges and problems you have. And that's when I did it nationally. It would get to me after a while. I mean, it would really, come January, I was totally exhausted because I dealt with so much stuff, and so many, the phone ringing, and, even very last minute, even on their way home, if their flight was delayed or their baggage got lost or whatever might happen, you still have to deal with that, because, again, he's a gentleman that did perform for you, and you needed to get him back home to his family. So all kinds of fun little stuff you do.
I'm thinking in the 70s and 80s, there were not cell phones, so you were attached to a landline.
Actually, I had an old bag phone. I probably had the very first phone they ever made out there, but we were attached to landlines. And to this day, I still retain the 800 number that I had with Santa Plus in Twinston. I still have had it. It kicks to my phone here. I still pay for it every month, just because I know there's some Santas out there that have that old 800 number that knows how to get a hold of me. And that's what I laughed. I said, I just don't have the heart to turn it off. It's just the idea of it. It's on a business card out there somewhere. They just might need me,
They might.
And there has been many a times I get calls from Santas that don't even really work for me. They work for another company or something now. And they'll say, can you help me do this? Or, I'm not real happy with what's going on here. What do you suggest? And that's why I laugh and say I'm the mother of them. They call Mom and say, Mom, what should I do, in this instance? Or how would I get around this? Or what's the best way to take care of this problem?
And how have you learned to solve some of those? Just being hands-on? I guess I should back up and say, what was your training in college? Has it helped you do this?
No.
Okay.
No,
that was what. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. My training was education. I was
not business.
I did teach. It wasn't business. I did teach for a couple of years at Mustang. one of the Mustang schools. I actually did their computer. I set up their computer lab for them. I got an IBM grant with the principal, and I worked countlessly for about a year with IBM. And again, we're talking back in the early 90s. And I happened to land an IBM grant that granted us 25 IBM computers. And so they taught me, they sent me to the school to set it up, to do all the back end side of it. And then I actually started teaching the teachers to use it for their grading system and all that. Now, this was way back before we ever had all the programs we got nowadays. And I set that up, and then I became the computer lab teacher, teaching the kids, keyboarding and all that kind of thing, in between doing the Santa stuff too, because I did that. But yeah, that was very important to me. But it was a school that my son was attending. I was a PTA president there, and I was very partial to that school. And prior to that, and it's kind of off the subject, but I'll never forget, Homeland had a program, the grocery store chain, that if you saved the receipts and got $1 million worth of receipts, they would donate it was an Apple computer at that time to the school. Well, I took this little project on. I think I had everybody in the country getting their Homeland receipts. The long story short, we got 25 Apple computers donated to that Mustang school because of the receipts. My husband was going out on his lunch breaks at Homelands, cleaning the parking lot, picking up the receipts. We made it. And so from then on, the school always knows me as a computer lady, but they also know me as a Santa lady too, because Santa would come and visit that school even back then. But no.
Well, those computer skills have come in handy.
They came in very handy. It did kind of land over, but it was not what I went to school, because back when we were in college, the computers were the size of my car back in the 70s.
Mine too, yeah.
So it has really education. It is about teaching, but I did learn to teach. But I teach gentlemen now, or Santas, how to do that role, and it did help me and learn to get on different levels. And then I understand from the children's standpoint the aspect of what a child really kind of needs, and the attention that it's kind of you need to give a child. So it really did help. But it's not the direction I was originally going.
No, but it was meant to be, evidently.
It is extremely a passion of mine. And like I said, that's what I think about anything. You've got to be passionate about what you do. You've got to love what you do. If you don't, it's not going to, you're not going to be happy with yourself. And then again, I wanted to finally figure it out if I can teach. Teaching in school would have been a legacy in a sense. In other words, we teach children, and we see them grow up and all that. But I also thought it was important that I give them a legacy on the holidays and memories and things like that. I mean, I've got some very sacred things in my heart. I'll never forget when we had the big tornado that came through here, and we lost some children over in Moore at a school. And I had a parent call me and said, "You took my child's picture at this particular mall. Would you happen to have a copy of it?" I did. And we gave them back their picture, and their child was killed in the tornado, but they have that memory back. And that's what I think what we do is important. Mm-hmm. So you're building memories for these families that really, sometimes you don't realize. And I know I have a sweet story down in Dallas of one of my Santas that sat in a chair, and he called me just crying. He goes, "Miss Becky," he said, "I had a child come through here today, and he said, the mama said it may not make it. He has to have a heart transplant." And, she wheeled her up in her wheelchair, and she said, "I pulled out your little secret that we play sometimes with kids." He said, "I teach my Santas to take a little bag with them, and if they happen to have a special child that they need to do something for," I said, "take a little bell and put it on a little strap of leather." And I said, "Keep those little bells in your pocket and do something with them with a special child." Well, he said, "Miss Becky," he said, "I took out my little bell and I strapped it to that child's wheelchair, and I said, 'Sweetheart, I want you to think of Santa and know that Santa's always with you when you hear the little bell ring.'" Well, he said, the mama and her come back up today, and he said they brought tears to my eyes. She still had that bell, and she was walking up here. And he said he put that bell on her hospital bed when they wheeled her in to get her heart transplant. And she said she's walking, and he said it's because Santa was with her the whole time. She had his little bell. Yeah. Those are special little things we're doing for families. Mm-hmm. And it was nothing but a tiny little bell and a little strap of leather.
No, more than that, though.
It is, and that's what we're making memories.
We need to write a book on all of these little...
That's what people said a long time ago.
Why you can still remember them.
Well, that the naughty stories too, not naughty. The fun stories we have from, like I said, the board round malfunctions.
Or when there's been an accident on their lap or on their knee.
I
guess
wish
I
it was that simple, but unfortunately it wasn't. It was Santa needed some mending done to his costume, and unfortunately the mending didn't get done, and the pictures got captured, and things fell out that shouldn't have fell out. And unfortunately, there's 7 still pictures out there somewhere that this manager sold, and just things like that. I mean, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time because it could have been prevented. But again, just little things like that. I mean, that's again from the standpoint of whoever's behind the lens needs to pay attention of what the gentleman looks like in his hands and everything. I mean, it's not just Santa's in a suit and yes, he's portraying this character, but it also takes the other person and whoever's working with him to make sure he stays in that type of performance. And there's another problem of, like I said, things falling out or splits or cracks or tears or something that all needs to be fixed and taken care of.
And you refer to them as a manager?
I refer to them like our set people, or it can be the photographer, it can be Santa's elf, it can be whoever's working with him at the time.
Are you coordinating that second person?
I used to be. I don't anymore. What I do now is just strictly provide the Santa, but again, I teach them that Santa, whoever you're working with, and he will always be working with somebody, usually if it's in a mall venue, if it's in a parade, if it's in whatever. He's got somebody that's basically his escort or whoever's with him to ensure that he looks properly fit, everything's in place, buttons are all buttoned, hair looks fine, and we're all together. So.
Well, there's their particular etiquette when they pass each other, if they're both in character.
Yes. Now, if you've got 2 Santas, as I refer to it, and what I teach them is when they walk out into their venue, they're on stage, okay? But if they're switching chairs or switching, it's going to be a switch. That always must be done behind closed doors. And they always can never have one Santa, always has to be outside and the other one has to be behind the closed door. Never, ever do you let the child see 2 Santas dressed together. And that's why sometimes I get a little excited when we do venues like with our national meetings and stuff. You've got all these gentlemen all dressed up, and they're like, it's kind of confusing if we go to a restaurant and you see all these children, and they're like, how come there's like 500 Santas in front of me? And so it's always been a challenge, even when our Oklahoma group gets together. I'd really almost prefer we try to do that more in private rooms and things like that, just because we do run into a bunch of children, because you got families that come into these restaurants or wherever we might go, and they will see multiple Santas. And so it's a challenge for Santa. And so some of them have gone to the stories of that, we're just Santa's helpers, and Santa sent us here, today for a meeting because we're all getting together. So you have to have some kind of storytelling and some kind of think quick on your feet when you run into those issues. But again, in my Santas, if we're at a venue, there better never be more than one Santa exposed at one time or on stage, because that's just not how I like it to be, and that's not setting the right image for the children.
They have a backstory for some of this, yes. So let's talk a little bit about the associations then. When did that start, or how did you get involved with that part of it too?
Well, the association started, back in the early 90s when the Real Bearded Santas all started getting together. And the International Association of Real Bearded Santas, or it used to be, they called it different names at the very start of it. Originally originated, there was a bunch of guys in California that got together, and they started a little organization. Well, about 2006, they decided there were beginnings of be a larger amount of Santas. And again, you had a large different Santas going different directions. Some doing commercials, some doing, a lot of newspaper print and ads, that kind of thing. And then you had your local Santas that was in your malls. And so I was contacted at the time I worked for Santa Claus, and I was contacted by the group to let's all get together. So we planned a large event in Branson, Missouri in 2006, which was the first national organization, or the first national meeting of the International Association of Real Bearded Santas, 2006. My company at the time was the Evergreen sponsor, which they asked for little sponsors for each of these conventions, and we had a large convention, and we had probably about 200 real bearded Santas show up, and it was a great little meeting. Well, we were supposed to, or the thought was to do it every 2 years or so. Well, that never really passed. And then you also got some Santas that throughout the course of their careers, sometimes they become got a large ego, as I refer to. And so some people, some Santas thought the other Santas were getting more work than they were getting. And so they all kind of got into a little challenger for a while. So we didn't have the next large convention until 2016. So it was 10 years in between. In 2016, we went back to Branson, Missouri. We had about probably 700 Santas show up at that time. I've got a picture in there if you want to see it of all those Santas that showed up at that meeting. And we had our official, kind of like what I call the official launch of the OOHRP, as they call it, or the International Association of Real Bearded Santas. Finally got themselves kind of organized and started doing this every 2 years. So since then, we had the 116, we had 2018 in Colorado. We had 2000, because of COVID, we had to go and switch to 2022, which was in Atlanta. And then this last year, we was in Memphis, Tennessee. The next one we are hoping will be hopefully Fort Worth. But again, there's a board that decides on the host city. And so we have these events now every 2 years, and they're growing more popularity. It's time to get together, and we have different classes that teach Santas different things. Again, anytime you have teachers, you're going to have different teachers with different type of personalities and different kinds of ways, but their intent as well. And so some of them I have to, as I refer to, need to correct them occasionally because they don't teach the proper way. But the long story short, there's usually classes on how to care and take care of their beards. There are classes on how to dress, and there's other classes on insurance and understanding the need and purpose of insurance. And there's also training on storytelling and just all kinds of different things that would come in handy for Santas. Then you'll have your vendors there that will sell all the different Santa costuming and belts and boots and custom-made suits. And then you'll have your Santas that are different vendors that will sell them props and things. But again, you have to be very conscientious and know exactly what your direction is going to be, and based on the kind of props or something you might want to use. So it's a fun convention. It's a great thing to go to, and it's some good education. But back when I started, you was either trained by people like me that worked for a particular company, or there was only 1 or 2 training schools. Now today, there's probably over about 200 training schools that teach Santas different things. But again, they all go off into different directions. And so you almost have to know what direction you want to be. Do you want to be a performing Santa on stage and tell stories? We don't have time in a mall venue or a sporting goods store to tell these big elaborate stories, because you might have a line that's got 30, 40 kids waiting to see Santa. Do you perform magic tricks, because they've got all kinds of little magic things you can do. But again, you don't have that kind of time. There used to be a great Santa that could make balloons and things like that. Again, it depends on the venue and where you're going to be set up and what you've got time to do. If you're on stage and going to be performing, there's a group of those Santas that like to do that. There's a group of commercial Santas that you see on your Mercedes commercials. You'll see on your Crystal commercials. I can't remember, Santa Tim Conahan out of California does a huge amount of those large commercials. But again, he's a commercial Santa, design, and he's never sat in a chair, to my knowledge, for more than 10 minutes to work with an actual child. But again, he portrays the Santa on television, which is, beautiful. He's got a beautiful look. And there's a couple other Santas I know that does some of the Hallmark stuff, and they do the Hallmark movies and that kind of thing. But again, they're not really chair Santas, as I refer to it, and really dealing with the everyday child, which is what I deal with in more direction of my career now.
More people skills for
Yes,
that, don't you?
You do. And I think that's the most important skills. You've got to have that for the children. That's what we're here for. I mean, that's the whole reason of Santa, is to provide an image and a memory for a child, So.
I would think you'd have to think on your feet, too, because you don't know what's going to come out of that child's mouth.
You definitely have to think on your feet. And I can train them for hours and hours on end, and it still will come up something that, like, what happened? This happened today. What should I have done? But you do. You have to have a broad line of thinking, and you have to be conscientious of what you're saying too, because you can never promise them nothing, and you can never deny them anything. Just like the Santa with the gun, that was what that particular area and that family, believed in. Santa has to be adaptable to different people and the different, ideas of what their child might want. And again, you can't ever tell a child no. So that's kind of where you have to be conscientious, and you have to not let your beliefs come through either. Because I've had some Santas
I wondered about that.
Have different religious beliefs and things like that, and you've got to you don't talk about religion. We do not talk about politics. I've had Santa get themselves in trouble about that too. You can't, and easy something teasingly can get yourself into big trouble. I had a Santa one time that a child had, I can't remember, I think it was Winnie the Pooh on his shirt, and Santa just casually said in a sweet little manner, "Look, you have Pooh on your shirt." Well, the mother gets all excitable and says, turn Santa in, and oh my goodness, he said this, and my child's offended, and this kind of thing. So again, you have to be very conscientious of what you say and what you do. You're on stage, even if you're not sitting in that chair, you're in a grocery store, you're out in the public, you're still recognizable. So as I tell these gentlemen, you have to lock yourself down for 45 days. You have to be conscientious. You don't go into anything that's not Santa-like. You don't have any un-Santa-like type traits, that you do out in the public that they could see you. It unnerves me if I see someone dressed in a Santa costume and they're bellied up to, even if it's just a casual bar or something, that's not Santa-like. Or smoking, or, now you have to deal with a lot of the marijuana shops and things like that we have here in Oklahoma. My Santas don't do commercials with them. My Santas don't have anything to do with that, because in my little world, in my mind, that's not Santa-like, and that's not what majority of the public thinks either. Even though mom and dad may do those kinds of things, they still don't like it around their children. And so that's why I have to be so conscientious about what the guys do, where they go, where they eat, what are they going to be captured in, and what kind of picture, because with people with cell phones nowadays, it can ruin a gentleman's career. Like, oh, look, I seen Santa coming out of the liquor store. No. Santa does not do that. So that's why I tell them you're on stage, even though you may not be on the public stage. You go to a grocery store, dress incognito if you can, or get something, if you're going to buy something that's not Santa-like, make sure you don't purchase it. It's not caught on camera or taped somewhere, because that could ruin your career. They don't want that kind of Santa representing their companies. And then again, that's another thing when Santa does private visits and things like that. I have to know exactly what they're doing and where we're going and what's going to be done at that particular party, because I don't want them in alcoholic parties, because again, I do with children. So my Santas don't entertain adults, that kind of thing. While there are Santas that do that, my Santas pretty much that I deal with strictly are designed for children, and that's exactly the direction I put my boys in, because I want them to portray the most image that they possibly can of the true Santa, what I think a child would want, or what normal, morals and values are.
Well, I'm assuming too, if they don't like your rules, they don't have to stay with you.
I usually don't harm as a Santa, to be honest with you. They're not going to be my Santa.
Okay, that's good.
Honestly, because I kind of have these conversations with them. I used to have a Santa that would, his terminology kind of cracked me up, but he goes, "We don't hire no womanizing Santas. We don't hire no smokers, no drinkers, and no cussers. If you're one of these kind of Santas, then we can't use you." And that was just kind of his way. It was kind of his training school. He was a magnificent man. He was a gentleman I did put at the United States White House. He owned a company called Naturally Santa. He was actually from Stroud, Oklahoma. Amazing man. Billy Gooch was his name, and he started a small little company back in 1995 to train Santas, because again, it was like me. We kind of got tired of some of the stuff we were seeing out there, because as we said, a lot of anybody can put on a red suit, okay? Not everybody can be Santa Claus. And if you don't have the morals and the type of image, then you're not going to be a good Santa, and people will call you out on it. And so you have to be very conscientious of who's in that red suit, and especially when you're putting yourself out there as Santa. So, I even had an Oklahoma guy last year that I used him for a little while. He was a good Santa. And nice man, but then he come off with, well, I said, Santa, do you want to change your costume before you head off to your, you're going home or whatever? No, I'm going to head over to the restaurant because they tell me they give me a free meal if I sit at the bar. No. We don't do that, okay? We don't do that. That's for adult kid. That's for adult Santas. You can't be a child Santa and do that, So that's again, it's just something that they have to learn, and they have to decide if that's the type of person they want to be. So,
to be lots of things to consider.
It's a large amount to consider,
especially the average person doesn't think about all that goes into it.
They don't know, but again, I feel proud when I walk in somewhere and I see one of my Santa's pictures on their mantle, or I walk into a bank and there's their Santa's picture. Or I was even stopped once at an airport, and the lady had, I guess, kind of recognized me, or she'd seen me downtown or something. She said, "You have a Santa's?" So she pulls out her wallet and she's showing me her pictures of one of my Santas and her child. And it's like, they warmed my heart, because I know I did something and I created a memory for them. And I know they had a good Santa, and they didn't have to worry about what that guy's going to do later on in life or what he's going to go to. And he really was truly a good Santa.
Well, since you're having so much of your heart and soul into the Santas yourself, do you enjoy the Christmas season?
I do, now that I retired from the national side of it. I finally got to go out with my family at Christmas, and I'll have to chase down little white-haired man as I go around. I finally got to spend a Christmas alone. And we actually had the Christmas tree, sometimes it gets so busy. I absolutely put my Christmas tree up in October, because it gets so busy for me because by November 1, my boys are usually sitting in chairs somewhere. So I have to plan and prepare in advance for Christmas and holiday stuff. But yes, I do now, as I've got older. I plan a little bit of family time, and always Christmas Eve. It's always been a tradition for us. By that time, usually the most of them are out of their chairs. Then we do have a Christmas Eve party for our family. We'll go and eat or do something all together as a family, because finally I get 5 minutes to spend to do that.
So the 25th.
The 25th.
Not much happens on the 25th.
25th, we pack up and go on a cruise. Okay. we do
couch.
Something. We leave. We'll do something. We'll finally relax for a few hours and finally spend some family time, because prior to that, it's just so busy and hectic, and so many different moving parts going so many different directions.
So from the practical side of things, how much you have to make in order to keep doing it. To the break even point where it's worth.
It is not really even about the money, honestly. Now, you're going to have some Santas that's all they think about.
Yeah,
it's not about the money. The Santa didn't buy me my house. My Santa World didn't do that. It was my husband's real job, our other jobs we had, our other investments. It's not about the money. Yes, there has to be a point that, I spend probably about $10,000 a year just in insurance for my Santas. Yes, I do get dollars for the venues that I make, but does it break even? I may make a little bit of money, but I'm not getting rich on it by no means. It's not a yearly.
You're not going in the hole is the point too.
I don't really go in the hole. And if I ever did, then we might look at it. But, we make a little, and my schools help a little bit. But again, I do a lot of nonprofit stuff too, things that I really don't care if we get money or not. Yeah. It's about the kids. It's about making these memories. I've lived my life. I did what I've got. I've got what I need. And I want to make sure that we leave a legacy for these kids. We do something fun for them. So, because not a lot of them get that in their lives.
So is there a goal out there that you haven't quite got to yet, business-wise?
Really, I could have as many accounts and stuff as I wanted, but I finally settled on what I want. I know it sounds ridiculous. With my national accounts I bid on, it's a bidding process we do each year to get the accounts I've got. They begged me to take more and more on. It's like, no. I did that for many years. When you book 1,800 Santas in 1 year, and you have to deal with 1,800 gentlemen with all their little personal problems and, just any little thing that popped up.
Too much.
It's too much for one person. And I said, I love dealing with my 12 little boys. I've got 12 guys here, and I will help nationwide. Any of these boys go down, any of these other places with our Santa, with, nationwide Santa, with the malls, I do help them find somebody. But I'm not going to take on the responsibility of being all over that, because I had it at one time. It's not worth it. It's too much stress for one particular person. And I can't go touchy-feely and make sure they're doing what I want to do and still represent my company well. So, and like I said, I mean, I'm still the old-fashioned one. I mean, back in the old days, yeah, we paycheck them and you never see them. You know, I personally go pay every one of my boys. I hand them their check once a week, only because I can see, I can make sure that they're meeting, you know, the expectations of where they're working and making sure they're doing okay. And I mean, they'll always stay in contact with me. And that's the other thing. Communication is certainly one of my strong points that I make them. They have to communicate with me. Let me know if something's wrong. Even like yesterday, I sent a text to every one of them. Just checking on you boys. You all still doing good in this hot weather, making sure you're staying, you know, healthy. That kind of thing, because I stay in contact with them. And they answer right back, you know. I'm doing good, Miss Becky. You know, we're staying in where it's cool and this kind of thing. So, you know, you've got to do that to be able to. It's just a family type thing.
So it's 12, as many as you want to do
12
for now?
For right now.
For
I mean,
now.
I could handle more, but I don't want to. I had that.
So the one that you put in the White House, did you get to go?
I did not, because I didn't get to go, but I've got pictures of him there at the White House. And what it was is it was to the UL company, which is the people that manufactures like our plugins and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They had sponsored a project that they wanted to put a little cabin on the White House lawn and open it up where people, now this is prior to COVID obviously, open it up where people could come in the Washington D.C. area and visit Santa. And so they did, but again, it was a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I had to have a Santa that had high clearance, because again, you're sitting in the White House. He was the only thing left on the property when the president would fly in and out, because they made everybody else leave the property. So he had to have that kind of clearance, which the Santa I got there was former military. And then he had to be very well trained, because again, you're in high publicity spot. So the best Santa I had at the time was Santa Billy Gooch. And like I said, bless his heart, he's passed now, but he owned his own training school too, and he had the same values I had, out of Stroud, Oklahoma, but lived in Colorado Springs and started this training school for Santas. And again, he would literally bring the Santas, make them stay a week with him. And he had a retreat that he actually housed the guys, because he could see what they did at nighttime. He could make sure, you know, their values they had. He'd make sure that, you know, they was represented and was the type of gentleman that could be a great Santa. And again, a lot of guys came out of that training school. Dan Short, which is one here that's a noted Santa here in Oklahoma City, another great Santa, very well-known man here and very well trained, good Santa. But he came out of that training school with Billy Gooch's. And so there's a lot of them, and I still use some of those guys today. But again, they have my values, and then I just do more tweaking, and we refresh them every year to make sure that they haven't lost anything or forgot something they're supposed to do.
What do you? This is a little bit different too. Do you still have the first outfit, or outfit that you costumed your husband wore? The very first.
I actually do.
First one.
Oh, I do. Yes, I do. I had the very first Santa suit. I've got the very first Santa suit. We probably. I probably got 70, 80 Santa suits now. Because again, I provide my boys their suits because I want them to all look uniform. I want to make sure I know what they look like.
So you measure them and order them and keep them here?
I do.
So clean them, or what?
I have a contract. They are cleaned. I have a contract with a company down in Oklahoma City that it's closer to where the Bass Pros and Cabela's are located. And so my boys drop them by there, and they each get like 2 to 3 suits per Santa. And that way they can rotate them around in case there is an accident or something, or in case they have a pet day or something like that, because you want to change those costumes out in case you have children that have allergies and things.
I forget about pets. That has become more popular lately, hasn't it? Well, maybe not lately. I don't know when it became popular, but it is very popular now.
Oh, and it's quite entertaining too. Do I have stories on pets?
When did that? Can you? I mean,
we started that probably about 98. 99, it became a thing. It was a marketing deal for some of the malls. They got the brilliant idea of so many people started liking pets and having, we assumed it's cats and dogs, only in our dreams. And then we finally had to actually specifically state that in certain places, certain venues, and other venues, they let them bring in anything still. But probably the late 90s is when it became such popular, and it should have been just cats and dogs. And people should have brought them, and we had little pet releases they should sign and all that. But I've had Santas that they had their fingers nipped in the gloves with the little pets because they decided to take a bite out of Santa because they didn't like Santa. I've had people bring in snakes, iguanas, Oh my gosh. I have a picture, I believe it is a donkey that was brought in last year at Bass Pro. Because Santa called and said, well, I've had everything now, so I'm left gluing a donkey. And it was the cutest little thing in the world. You know, they had it all dressed up and fixed up. I've had pigs. Those sometimes are classified as service animals. So we've had, and I'm not talking little pigs, I'm talking 350 pounders. Oh my gosh, I had a horse one time, but Santa couldn't go outside for the horse because they had brought it in El Paso, Texas, and it was a kind of a controversy. They wanted us to go outside and take pictures of the horse. It's like, unless they can come in the mall, they can't, but in there they bring chickens and all kinds of different things. So pets have been all over the world, all over the zone of whatever kind of pets you might have. They've brought them in to have pictures taken, but we finally got in the mall level. Usually it got to where it was cats and dogs only because it becomes such exotic challenges. And then again, some of my Santas are a little bit squeamish on some of those animals, from the snakes and things like that. Although I have a Santa, I actually have a picture in here. This is one of our promo pictures we sent out years ago, and probably, I don't know if this has a date on it. This is one of our Santas with a python that they literally brought in. It said,
oh, I could not have done that.
yeah. Absolutely. So some of my boys are a little squeamish on stuff like that. So you gotta know your Santa and what they're capable of doing. And just like I have a dear little Santa I use right now, he's one of my boys. He has a huge allergy to cats. Well, last year was a little incident. A customer brought the cat in, and Santa really didn't realize it was a cat at the time. He wasn't quite sure what was going to be and Santa referred to it in his sweet little way. They kind of just threw it at me. I said, now Santa. He goes, well, it kind of got on me before I knew what it was, and I didn't realize it was a cat. And he said, I look at it, and he said, the cat looks at me, and he said, the cat decides to take off, and it whipped by my tail, the tail whipped in his eye, and needless to say, Santa's eye was swollen the next day. The cat jumps off of Santa and jumps over onto one of the reindeer in part of the display, and then it runs through the display. He goes, it was quite amusing after it jumped off of me. He said the poor little thing was scared to death. I'm sure it was, but he's always about as scared as it was, because he said the owner just kind of, instead of just handling Santa. So what I've tried to teach a lot of the people that working in some of the sets, and again, I don't have control over all of them, but I suggest to them that when they have animals and stuff, to let the pet owner bring the animal up and be in the photo with them. That way the animal is usually a lot more calmer. But if they absolutely want it on Santa's lap, then to make sure Santa's aware of what it is. Like every year we do downtown too, what we call Santa, it's Paws for Claws type event that's down off of Broadway too. And they will bring up their animals, mostly dogs and stuff. A lot of people have a lot of dogs down in that part of Oklahoma City, and cats will come too, but they dress their animals up. But we do that outside, and Santa usually has a hold of their leash, and they can take pictures that way. But in some of my store events and enclosed events, they don't have necessarily the leashes, and that's how the cat got away. So you have all kinds of fun stories with animals and stuff, but it is more popular, and every venue pretty much I do, if it's, a certain amount of days, then they usually will have a pet event with it. So.
Your insurance and liability includes animals then, or pets, whatever, pets and animals.
Has to.
How about candy?
Candy?
Do you do?
I always give out candy canes. Now, I know that can be controversial in some places.
Well, diabetics. But
my Santas always have candy canes on them. To me, that represents Christmas. It's always something that's been traditional. And we give out the little individual wrap candy canes. My Santas carry them with them. And then at all my venues, they give those out. On my schools, they give them out. And then that's also what Bass Pro Cabela's have that they hand out in their stores. And so we always hand the child a little piece of candy. They always get something when they go away. And some stores also have other little venues, from coloring books to different things like that they give kids. But again, it's based on the venue. Venues give those out. If it's something that I'm handling, like a school district or something, then I provide those giveaways.
So you shop for candy canes early then?
I buy.
Or after
last year
Christmas.
I bought 14,000 candy canes. And we distributed all of them.
At local stores or ordered
That's all
online?
my school. No, we used to could buy some local, and thank goodness my son has a wholesale or has a business we can buy wholesale. But last year I ended up buying on Amazon. And prior to that, it was a wholesale company out of Utah that I bought them from. But they didn't have enough last year for what we needed. But I need that for my school districts and for the venues that I do downtown. So we go through about 14,000 a year. That's what I do. And I can imagine your Bass Pro Cabela's are probably, I think, one time they were going through about 25, 30,000 of them a year per store.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot. We see a lot of children. I mean, lots of children.
You can buy them after Christmas on sale and put them in the freezer.
You could. I know that they do say, but there's not a lot of stores that carry them anymore. Used to be Sam's and stuff would carry, big pallet loads of them, but they wasn't selling like they were because I'd try to go buy them after Christmas like that, but they don't tend to have them anymore. So I don't know.
It's the health phase, I guess.
It could be. And then again, you do have some children that are diabetic. And so I usually try to have a color sheet or something for that if it's something that, they can't have them or something. But normally most children like them. So.
Do any of your Santas know sign language?
Yes. Some of them know sign language. So I've got a couple of them that do sign for the children. There was one of them that I've used that his daughter's deaf. And so he's had to do that for his entire the course of his child's life. So yeah, they do that, but it's not always something that's required. There are some that's also bilingual, and sometimes we have to have that based on the different markets. I have some bilingual Santas, so there's just depends again on your market and what your venue is requiring. Mm-hmm. So again, like I said, every venue I deal with, it's like, okay, we want a Santa. When I get a call, it's like, I need Santa, not hypothetical. I need a Santa, Mrs. Claus. I want this particular time, this particular date. It's like I said, if it's a Mrs. Claus, and based on the venue, if it's not something that's going to be, really a large venue or publicized or something, then I'll probably go be Mrs. Claus. If it's something I absolutely need something, then I will call one of our local Oklahoma Santa Claus, Mrs. Clauses that really, has done a lot more venues and stuff. I mean, not that I can't do it, I'll do it, but I'd rather have, if they're going to be publicized or printed, I'd rather have someone that really loves to get into the role of Mrs. Claus. I get into the role of Easter Bunny better than I do Mrs. Claus. I love being Easter Bunny.
So you do that too, but that's not.
Oh yes,
that's not. Okay. Well, you'd have to, I guess. Well, you wouldn't have to, but that's
some of the
same skills you use.
The contracts require that. And especially in your mall side of it, they require you to do both holidays. Ah, okay. So no, I did all kinds of stuff, including Halloween stuff.
So for the malls, is it a contract year to year, or do you have like a 5-year
I don't do the malls anymore, but they used to be done on every 3-year basis.
Okay.
And so they would every 3 years it'd come up for bid. And again, like I said, I kind of got out of that mall world because it just it was going down, I knew. And again, I got sold after 13 times and doing it so many times. I'm thinking I am done. But a lot of the friends and stuff that I had in that market too got out. I mean, all your marketing directors left the malls and stuff too because their positions were being did away with because they were being combined with other positions to save dollars. Yeah. But usually those contracts are done on 3 years. What I do with this National Sporting Goods, those are done on every 2 years.
Okay, so you know a year ahead of time what you're going to need to do.
Usually, yeah. We know exactly what which venues and which centers we've got and that kind of thing. Back but I just finished we just signed the contracts on that again for this year, so we'll go for another 2 years, and I know exactly which stores. Again, now it can change, and those venues have the options to pull out of a contract if they don't like way their performance. We wasn't meeting their expectations or something, but. Normally, they usually stay with the same vendor for at least a certain amount of time. And that's all usually controlled by their corporate. A lot of your local places don't have the ability. Now, they have the ability to say, yes, we like the people, or no, we don't. But a lot of it's controlled by their corporates.
Do you do a portfolio and send them, or how do they get to see what Santas they might have up front?
They do. They actually, what they do on this, picking out their Santas, is once the contracts are signed, you deal with the local people to say this is what I have available, or this is a person that we think. Now, back when I originally started, I was able to send out. Actually, I would send each center 3 different Santas, and it's like, okay, I think these gentlemen would work for your venue. Do you like this particular look, this one? And then sometimes it actually hold personal interviews with a Santa. I've had centers get to the level of flying the Santas out for an interview, but rarely that happened. A lot of times it'd be over the phone, or 90% was just looking at the pictures, and I want this guy, and he looks like someone that would work well for my, center or whatever. But and local ones here that I do, those guys have come back year after year, so they know kind of they actually request them. And so that's what I love about my boys. They want my boys back.
And you have the reputation that comes,
I do.
reliable reputation.
Things happened once a couple of years ago here, and a person failed to do the job that they were hired to do. And I'm talking about the Santa provider. And I bailed a couple of the places out and I provided them with some of my boys. And those are kind of things that they never forget either. And that's, but I do that because, again, I didn't want their customers disappointed. I didn't want their children disappointed. And that's not how the Santa world should work.
So has the Santa business bounced back from COVID?
Oh, yeah.
Even
I actually
bigger and better or whatever?
I never had any issues with COVID. Even during COVID, we found ways to get around it. We found ways in the sporting goods stores to put up the plexiglass to block them off. Santa's wasn't exactly extremely happy about it because they like the interaction of touching and, holding the children or whatever. But we got through it. But again, it never really bothered us that much. I mean, we found ways to work around it is probably the proper way to say it. We had to, be ingenious, and like I said, I came up with the snow globe, and plexiglass was a new thing we all learned a whole lot about.
Yes.
We learned about spacing, and you can still get by with this, but you just space the children out, so.
And mask if you have to, I guess.
We did. Some of the Santas would wear masks, and then we had the big vinyl pieces that would go over them too, the vinyl masks. And again, they weren't extremely happy about it because, again, they're like, I'm okay. I took my vaccine. I'll be just fine, And it's like, but Santa, we've got to go by the rules of whatever the venue's requesting us to do. So.
Sure. Well, in others, not COVID year, but the other years, do they do certain things to stay healthy during the season?
Oh, yeah. The Santas. I always tell them to, first of all, go to their doctors and get a checkup. If they, a lot of them get their vaccines of there's flu shots and all that kind of thing. While during the season, they need to stay extremely hydrated. Some of them take, a little bit more vitamins than what they normally take. But no, there's a little regimen. And in my little book that I created on Santa and training Santas, I tell them those kind of things to maintain their hygiene, maintain their health during the season, even prior to the season, to keep their cells in fit. And just like I said, I check in on them occasionally just to make sure, guys doing okay, you're feeling well, everything going okay.
Extra vitamin C and was it airborne?
Yeah, there's some of them do that. I mean, they do all kinds of stuff. But normally, I luckily, now I'm not saying I'm not with us, hope we don't do it this year, but I really haven't had a lot of my Santas get sick on me. But again, they do take real precautions, and they know they change their gloves more often too. Sometimes the gloves, you'd be surprised how dirty they can get. And so they at least have a new pair on every day, but some of my Santas will do it every 2 or 3 hours, switch out their gloves. And so just to keep themselves clean and that kind of thing.
And they can laundry those themselves.
Oh, yes. I will laundry them. They will. But yes, they all get usually about 30, 40 pair of gloves. I provide them every year, and then they can rotate them throughout the deal. But yes, they have at least one new pair every single day. But again, I have to buy gloves too. You'd be surprised the stuff I have to do.
So you have a Santa bedroom here closet that's just full of suits?
I have a 3-car garage that's got stuff in it. And we have a warehouse too that I store some of the stuff in.
With those, you'd have to worry about moths and things.
Well, I really don't have that much
anymore.
Not so much anymore. I don't have that much problem with them. But again, I keep them under, right, but I keep them, temperature controlled too, and I keep it on and stuff like that. But I also replenish new suits every year. Every year I will buy suits, and like some of your other Santas you'll talk to. And I buy like what I call off the rack suits is what I use for my Santas. But again, I do that because I need to rotate them, and then after a while they're pretty much done. They've lived their life. But I don't want to spend thousands of dollars like some of these guys do on these costumes, because it's not practical for me to do that, since they don't live. They're all got the same life expectancy. So
are the hats different? Or do you use the same hats for?
All the Santa hats are all the same. My Santas have elastic in the back, so they stay on their heads. Where in the old days they built them for those synthetic or designer beards and stuff, and they were a lot larger heads, so they would come down over the heads. If you get any of the older things, that's why all the new suits are designed for real bearded Santas.
Mm-hmm. So all are your 12 Santas real bearded?
Yes.
Real bearded?
Absolutely.
And do you, I don't know proper word, but judge the real bearded versus the synthetic. Is there some, I don't know, competition or level in there or whatever?
It's pretty much whatever the venue decides they want, but
and it's traditional bearded, right? Is what the synthetic is.
Yeah, they call him designer beard. But now, Mitch Allen is who owns our Santa, and I keep bringing him up because he's a great guy and he's got compassion as much as I do about this business, and that's one of the reasons I lended my reputation to his business because of his passion he's got. He's growing a beard now. I don't think his wife likes it because he's still a little bit younger than I am. But he uses designer beard. He's the Santa for the Dallas Parade. And he uses designer beard, which is very beautiful. You really can't tell he's designer beard once he puts that on. He really looks good. And he can pull it off. I mean, unless you really can walk up to him, maybe you could tell. I can tell only because I know who he is and I know. But there are some great designer beards out there that people can get by with doing it. And, you know, to me, it doesn't matter. The children usually doesn't matter, but there are some children now that's grown up in the real bearded Santa world, and they'll yank. So they got to make sure they've got them put on real well with a spirit gum or some kind of something to hold them on, because there are children that will pull them, just like that baby in there right now. She gets a hold of his whiskers all the time. So babies love to do that. Children love to do that. So they just need to, that would be the only difference. You got to watch, because back in the old days, I could not stand it. When I would walk up and I'd see a guy pulling his beard down, I'd think, no, don't do that. No. You're not a good Santa. Get that beard back up.
Well, they're expensive too, I guess, the designer ones. I would imagine
they can run about $3,000 to $5,000 based on what you get. The Yak beards is one, but now there's another couple of companies out there that make them. But Yak beards at the time was around $1,000 back in the early 90s and stuff. And so it's one, I got my husband one of those at one time, but now he's got his own, so we don't have to worry about that. But, and then the other thing is the cleanliness of them. You want to continue to just stay with the same person. You don't want to share them or, you know, rotate them around or nothing.
So I'm thinking maybe, have you placed someone in the Macy's Day Parade?
I have not, and because Macy's hire their own, and so they had the same Santa there for a long time.
The same look.
Yes, and he is, that one gentleman is a synthetic bearded Santa that they use, but that's, you know, they have different Santas even at their store up there. You know, they run 2 different levels, and you can get in line, and based on which line you're going to be in, depending on which Santa you'll see, because they've got them on different floors. They run a whole special thing there. But I did do the Rockettes and Top of the Rock. Back in my day, I've placed Santas from those places too. So I've got them some good venues, but we never did Macy's because they always did their own thing. So
we did the Oklahoma City Parade, I guess you said.
I do downtown in Oklahoma City. I do the Mayor's Christmas tree lighting, and I do anything with downtown in OKC. Okay. And so I've got all their venues, which is Lights on Broadway. I've got the Santa Run. We do the Santa Pause. I'm trying to think what else is down there. I've got a whole list of things that I've already got on the calendar this year. So
are you already booked?
Oh yeah.
So you got a few vacancies? Probably not.
I've got a few. I mean, we've got some Saturday things. I do some stuff for some advertising companies and different things like that. And then we'll do some real estate companies that want some of the Santas where they'll bring in for their clients that they sold homes for. And so, I mean, there's all different kinds of venues that we do that require Santas. And these are after the other events we do. So,
yeah, it's quite rewarding and quite taxing, I guess.
It can be. And like I said, making sure you get the guys where they're going and get them in the right, you know, spots and make sure they're ready to go.
Are you training someone to come in and take your place? Or you got anybody in mind?
My son, but I'm not sure what level he's going to do. Now, he helps me with all my school projects. He does handle all that. But as far as my downtown events and stuff, he does help with some of it. Matter of fact, the antique car, the old Mercedes that we use that they sit on Automobile Alley, that he belongs to him. And so he does, and I probably figure, I mean, he grew up in the industry. We had him bringing up people, as I call it, bellying up to the sales counter, bringing up people when he's about 5 years old. But he knows the industry. He's got some passion for it, and he loves the Santas too. I just don't know with his other business how further he'll take it, but he probably will. I could see him doing it because he loves the Santas too much.
Well, you'll do it for 20 more years. He's got time
Definitely.
to grow into it.
He loves the Santas, though. He really does. He's very compassionate with them. And like I said, the school Santa he works with every single day that we take into our school districts. And so he does the photo shoots for them. So like I said, he really is involved in the business to a level of the school side of it. The retail stuff he's not so much into, but he will cover some of the gigs. So he'll go and sit with the Santa or go and watch a Santa if I needed him to do that.
So let's back up. Just when you were a young girl, do you have any pictures of yourself sitting on?
I do, but I couldn't find them to give them to you or let you see them. I don't know.
But at least you know you.
Oh
you
yeah, and they're all with I'm screaming. I'm absolutely screaming. Every one of them I've ever had. But again, I did that till probably I was 13. We screamed. But now our fun thing when we was young kids, every Thanksgiving, my dad would take us and we would sit in the parking lot after we'd ate our Thanksgiving dinner at, I believe it was Penn Square Mall, because they had a big blow up Santa Claus that they would blow up. And, on a certain time, like at 6 o'clock, right before it started to get dark, they'd blow that crazy Santa up. And that was, they would have cars parked all over their parking lot just to see the big Santa just blow up, And I don't mean, he's just like a big inflatable Santa. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, back in the days, it didn't take much to entertain us kids. Not really.
Did you have brothers and sisters then?
Yes, I'm the eldest of 4. Mm-hmm. And so we would take the old station wagon over, go sit in the parking lot. And I laughed and said, it's probably on my dad's cheap entertainment too. They didn't have to do anything much for the holiday at Thanksgiving, but we'd always have Thanksgiving dinner. And I know that was just a big thing that I don't know why it just excited my parents to death. But, we started the holiday season just to go watch Santa's, the inflatable Santa be inflated at the top of the mall.
Well, did your dad dress up as Santa for you?
He didn't. He never was. We never was much doing that. My dad worked for Oklahoma Gas and Electric, OG&E, and they would always have big giant Christmas parties every year for us kids, and they would always have a Santa, and then we would go and there would be entertainment or something, and then they would give you the stocking full of the fruits and the candies and the nuts and all that. And I remember, gosh, that was from the 60s and 70s. By the time the 80s rolled around and my son came along, they started doing private parties more at each division. And it ended up my husband was their Santa for them. And so they would buy individual presents then for the kids instead of the stockings and doing the big thing that they used to do corporately. So
Santa has been in your life a long time.
Since we were married. And we've been married, yesterday was 47 years.
And even before that with your dad too.
Yeah. Well, my dad, like I said,
cool memories.
He liked, he loved the Santa stuff and that kind of thing. Of course, I have an antique Santa that my grandfather owned some of the IGA grocery store chain here in Oklahoma City. And he owned Doc's IGA. And so he had a big Coca-Cola display. And I have the original, and my mother saved it all these years. And when she passed on, the original little Santa that's in on that display that was stuffed, and he's just an old antique Santa with a little tiny bottle of Coke in his hand. So yeah, Santa's kind of been around. We was never allowed to touch that when we were children, and I laughed and it's like, okay, now I have him in a bag, and I don't touch him much either.
Put him behind glass.
Exactly, you probably should. But
and then for a while, people would have blow moles. Santa blow moles. You don't see those too much anymore though either. So
no,
Christmas is still a pretty big deal for a lot of people.
It's still a huge deal. And like I said, I think the memories and the pictures is, like I said, I wouldn't think even print pictures would still be popular, but they still are. People still, even though we have our phones and all that kind of thing, they still like to print pictures and they like to be able to show them. Now they do a lot of times, I know in my school sales, there's getting more and more popularity of, the digital pictures, but then we also provide a printout of it. And grandma or somebody always gets that digital print, and kind of, like I said, that's what they've got to go back on. When people are gone or children grow up, they can go back and see those little images of, when they were little.
So. I can remember Polaroids, Instamatics. I think that's what they were called.
They were. That's what
they would develop while you stood and watched.
That's what we originally started with. That's what I was trying to find. I think I have one in here. And that's what I laughed. That's what we originally started doing. With the original picture was the instant. Yeah, it's right here. Here was some of the original ones that we did. This was at Crossroads in 1999. Whoops, sorry.
That's yeah.
That's the kind of stuff we used to do.
And relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, special. Okay. think our time is running out,
It's
isn't it?
fine. No, baby's fine. But no, there's all kinds of stuff, pictures and all kinds of things. If any of this you want to look at,
Well, no,
prints.
I have asked most of my questions. If there's stuff in there that you think we need to cover that I don't know
I
to
have
ask
no
about.
idea. It's just all kinds of fun stuff that I got to do during my career. This is a DreamWorks with Sony that we did the big houses. Now, most of the houses were like in the Dallas market, Colorado market. And there was the houses that came to life, and they actually had a sleigh ride inside, and then we had Santa inside in his magic room. Those were fun things we did.
You did that all from Oklahoma City.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I managed the DreamWorks projects from there. This is one of our Santas, and that's my Santa. I brought him from Colorado. The DreamWorks
With the
project.
dog.
And that's one of the things.
So they can choose to have the glasses, or they have to have glasses.
Most of them have glasses, and I prefer they have that glass look.
Yeah, it adds to it's what people
Exactly.
expect.
And here's like a 2016 picture of one of my Santas, and this was we did again, that was at a Crossroads Mall when we did stuff out there, because that one I handle exclusively. I got that contract probably about 2000, and so I would kind of use that as my training grounds for Santa. I'd bring them in, and that gave them a lot of children to visit with, and then I could work more one-on-one with them, and it gave them the actual in the chair experience before I sent them out other places. So that was kind of my training grounds there. But I got newspaper prints of stuff like that, and this is Santa Dan Short that I talked about. I started him in his career.
Is he still around?
He's still around. He's a great Santa.
I like his outfit.
He's beautiful. That's a toy shop look, as I refer to it. And that was an actual look that Santa Billy Gooch, a gentleman that started Naturally Santa, that was the look that he had for all his Santas. And so some of the malls would accept it, some wouldn't. But they had a coat that went over this. But a lot of those Santas that was trained from that school still have those costumes today. This Santa has that costume too. But that's what they call the toy shop look.
Yeah, without the hat.
I have with that. Well, most of those little guys didn't have any hair. That's what I'm like.
Let's see if it'll show up. Yeah,
They show up. And these just older pictures.
And then that one.
That was Bobby Riggs Jr. right there. That's who I originally worked for. I originally started out. And then that was just other venues and stuff we did. We did Mount Rushmore. We used to take pictures at all the events and things like that at different venues from Mount Rushmore to, oh my gosh, what was some of the other national monuments that we'd go around and that we'd have pictures taken at. And so I hired people to do that at one time too. This is one of my first Santas that I had. This is 95 that I did a training at Crossroads. He's gone now, bless his heart. His name was Claude, but he was just an amazing Santa. Very, very sweet man. He could sit in that chair for 12 hours straight and never have a break. But he drank coffee like crazy. And I used to laugh because I said, I have no idea where it's going. Because I'm thinking I would have had to probably have a little break sometime. And
the green chair must be a thing.
The green chair was what they had. They had green chair a lot at because it would you put the red with the Santa. Sometimes it'll blend in. That's why you dress your children. You want to kind of dress them in a different color than Santa's suit because they'll blend in depending on how little they are.
That makes sense too. Sweet, sweet, sweet.
Oh no, I got lots of fun stuff. But like I said, it's through the course of my career, I've got more pictures and more stuff you can imagine.
And some of you with Santa, I hope.
Some with me. There's occasionally with me and Santa. I try to stay out of that limelight.
So the workshop look, the chair look. Are there other different? Are they different?
Majority of the time, it's really pretty much just those two. I mean, my Santas will do different poses. Like Santas will lay on the chair, they'll fall asleep like they look like they're sleeping in the chair with a baby. I have Santas that'll get down on the floor. If sometimes you have to get on the children's level, if they're handicapped children or something, my Santas know to get up and then to accommodate however that can be. I've had Santas that we've actually put the children in the chair and Santa stands behind the chair because the kids are afraid. But they don't realize Santa's standing right behind them. And so there's all kinds of fun stuff you can do, but you've got to be creative and kind of each type visit is going to be different. So you've just got to adapt yourself.
Roll with it.
You've got to roll with it and be very flexible. Like I said, you never know what you're going to get yourself into.
Or adults and teenagers that ask to sit.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother. What I've learned to do on those kind of aspects is I teach my Santas to, if it's adult or a teenage young lady, they need to sit beside Santa, or they need to stand up, or Santa needs to let them sit in a chair, because that's where Santa gets himself into trouble sometimes. Unfortunately, as someone gets older and they really don't want to do it, or they've got, like I refer to it, evil on their mind, they will cause challenges with Santas. And so it's just better if they just want to sit or want to do something, we just get the picture and get it over with quickly. But I prefer they sit beside Santa and they're not on his lap, because they make accusations, or they can make accusations, and it's just better not, we don't go that direction. So I always say any adult, anybody probably over 13, 14 years old, of a young lady, or any women sometimes, especially in like the malls, we ran into problems with people becoming a little bit intoxicated in some of the restaurants in the malls, and the ladies would come down and want pictures with Santa, which is fine, but unfortunately their mind wanders the wrong direction, and then they want to get a little excitable, and Santa gets himself in trouble. It's like, nope, stand up, Santa, just let them sit in the chair and stand there by them. You're much better off that way, because again, you don't want to offend them, but again, they're not really in their right mind sometimes in some of the things they say and do. So
you practice some scenarios, or share, I guess. Is that
share
some
a
of the
lot.
things
That's
that goes
some of
on
the
at the
things
chapter
that
meetings?
the chapter meetings and at the conventions, yes, we do share that. And Santas will tell the experience of a Santa. I know a Santa here locally that got himself into trouble because something he said, and it come right out of his mouth before he thought. And again, whatever you're doing, whatever the child wants, you tell them you can see what you will do. You never say yes, and you never say no. Well, unfortunately, this child came up and said they wanted an iPhone or something, and Santa just thought in his little mind, and what possessed him said, I don't know, but he doesn't bring items from China. And that is not true, Santa. You do not say things like that. And he was not my Santa, but he came to me and asked, what did I do wrong and how could I fix it? Well, I said, well, first of all, you never say anything about where anything is manufactured. We don't care where it comes from. You're Santa Claus. You don't say that. I've heard some Santas out there in some training schools say Santa only makes toys that he can handle, or that he makes in the workshop of wood, or he only makes workshop toys. He don't do electronics and things. You don't say that, because unfortunately these families buy these things. If that that may not be your idea of toys for a child, but that's their family's ideas. So you have to be flexible, and again, you can't let your personal feelings come out when you're dealing with the public. We have people that don't even believe in Santa, but they want their children's picture taken. Yeah. So you have to deal with that kind of thing too. They'll say, we don't believe in you, but we want their picture taken. It is a holiday.
And parents that threaten their kids, if you don't do what I say, Santa's not going to come. That type of thing too.
Oh, they do that, and Santa gets kind of excited about that stuff sometimes. But you've got to be flexible. Again, that's their ideas, and that's the way they do their discipline. We're their children, and so, like I said, Santa just usually tries to take over those kind of situations. Like, well, come on up here, let me visit with you. I'm sure you've been a good little boy. Tell me about it, or tell me what something you're thinking about for Christmas. And so we try to divert those kind of comments and that kind of situation to get it off the child. And we don't like it when the child is blamed for things. I'm like, well, he's been bad and we don't want this. No, there's good in everybody, which Santa has to bring it out, and that's Santa's job.
So you've got a variety of things in your hat. You're a counselor, you're a trainer, you're a business person.
My family always said I was a counselor. I should say credit card number, please, because they would call and say, oh my gosh, I had this, what I do, and it's like, he said, like, you're counseling them. But again, that's what I want to do, because that's to get them to do their job to the best ability they can. So
you have reached a lot of children through your Santas through the years. So that's I can say thank you for doing that.
Well, I think at Bass Pro, we were lucky enough to hit our millionth customer with Santa 3 years ago, I believe it was. And unfortunately, that Santa passed away too. But he was been down there for almost 10 years at that store, and they absolutely loved him. He was an amazing guy too, and he'd been with me all those years. But he did a great job down there. But it was exciting. It was a big publicity deal that day too, that we hit the 10,000th child to come through to see Santa.
That's a lot. Yes.
It was a lot.
And
So
to keep track of that, I mean,
I say, it's a million one. It was a million customer. I think it's a million child come to that store. It was outrageously ridiculous.
so they kept track of that. You didn't. They did.
Oh, they keep track of all those. I don't. I know that I can tell you if we're doing photos or something about approximately how many children we see. But as far as those venues that I'm just providing Santas, it's just hundreds and hundreds that come. I mean, they know per day there's only a certain amount they can see, and I want to say it's about 300 to 500 they see a day. So
if you do that times, as long as you've been
times
doing
40,
it, my gosh,
I've seen millions of children and all across the world. So
it's amazing. You just don't think about all of this.
You don't know all that behind the scenes stuff that does go on. But I mean, again, it's something you've got to love. And I enjoy doing it. I want to do it. I want to make sure we're setting a good precedence for the kids. They're our next generation. So who knows? They'll have to take care of us. We've got to make sure we got to train them right and give them the right memories and do right things for them.
So, Amanda, anything else? I'll ask my last question then.
All right, baby.
How do you want people to remember Becky Norman?
My legacy is that I was a Santa mama.
Okay, but
I did take care of Santas. I provided the Santas for Oklahoma and for all the people across the United States and actually in the world. I tried to provide them the very best men to represent the role of Santa and to actually leave a legacy for their children, that they have great memories of holiday time, with someone that would actually talk and visit with them, and that they knew was a true Santa that really loved what he was doing too. So that's kind of my legacy. I just want to make sure that everybody knows, that this is what I love to do. This is my passion. And it's like I wanted to do it. And hopefully some of it will reflect. And I think some of it has.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen some of it come back saying, these are great guys. I got lots of little notes and things from people saying, thank you so much for making, our Christmas happen and, providing something special for our family. So.
Yes, you have brought hope and happiness and joy and all of that to millions of people too. So, and right here from Oklahoma.
Absolutely. Well, we even did virtual calls during COVID too. That was another fun thing we did. Yeah. Those wasn't so fun, but we did them.
And you've even dressed as Santa.
I have. I've been Santa one time. That's what I told my boys one time. You can't walk a mile in someone's shoes and tell them how to do it unless you've actually experienced it yourself. And I never walked a mile, but I know what they dealt with. I know what they deal with, and I kind of have the experience to tell them what to expect. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing
Absolutely
it with me today.
Welcome.
It's great.
Enjoyed it.
It's great. I love it.
Learned a whole lot of different things.
It's great. It's amazing, really. I mean, you just don't think about